The life of a ninja beginning in the Hidden Mist village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 Retreat. How could this happen? How could this happen? Seeing the scene in front of them, some Konoha ninjas collapsed immediately, and they rolled and crawled to look through everybody, trying to find familiar faces among them. Because, among the reinforcement behind them, many people took the initiative to apply for transfer, just to rescue their relatives and friends. However, the tragic scene in front of them made them heartbroken. They were still a step late. Not long after, many Konoha ninjas found their familiar faces among the corpses on the ground. Oh my god. Why is this happening? Brother, open your eyes and look at me. Look at me. Dad, wake up. Dad. Those who can find the remains of their relatives and friends are lucky, because many people are wrapped in an unknown milky white substance, and their faces cannot be recognized at all. That is the solidified mucus of Terumi Men's dissolving escape. Everyone can only barely judge, based on the situation in front of them, that those people should also be Konoha ninjas who died in the battle. Someone was very curious, and took great pains, to open the milky white substance covering a body, only to see a bloody corpse inside. The part wrapped in the milky white substance seemed to have been eaten by many wild beasts. There was no intact skin at all, and the original appearance could not be recognized at all. It was really horrible. Even many of the Konoha ninjas who were watching vomited all over the floor, not daring to look at it again. Everyone, pay attention. Don't open the remains sealed by unknown milky white solids for inspection. Noticing the shocking scene, Uchiha Shisu immediately ordered to warn everyone. A Konoha ninja who was dismantling the remains was also scared, after asking his companions for the specific reason. Fortunately, he was a step slower and had not opened the milky white sealed substance next to him. Otherwise, it would be uncomfortable. Captain Shisu, what should we do next? Do we continue to chase the group of mist ninjas? Someone approached a young ninja carrying a short sword and asked quietly. He had no relatives or friends in the team that was killed, so he could still control his sadness and keep a clear mind. Looking at the corpses and the collapsed compatriots in front of him, Shisu felt very heavy. If he had chosen to fight decisively when he encountered the group of mist ninjas earlier, perhaps such a tragedy would not have happened. Pass the order down, pack up everyone's bodies, and prepare to return, Shisu said helplessly, looking at the cold full moon above his head. At this moment, he felt that this night had never been so cold. But, others will not agree, right? The man said hesitantly. Glancing at the many compatriots who were crying heartbreakingly, Uchiha Shisu asked back, in your current state, can you really fight? The man was speechless. Most of the companions fell into an indescribable sadness, and they could not recover in a short time. Fighting in this state, their strength would be greatly reduced, which was very dangerous. Then, Shisu patted the man on the shoulder again and said solemnly, if you don't want to see more of your companions sacrificed, then pass on my words without missing a word. If anyone disagrees, then come and talk to me in person. Do you understand? Seeing his extremely tough attitude, the man didn't dare to say anything else, and could only nod stiffly. Then, Uchiha Shisu's order to retreat was passed on to everyone in the entire army. Immediately, dozens of angry Konoha ninjas came over and tried to get him to order a pursuit. Shisu knew that it was impossible to reason with this group of overly sad companions. At this moment, they only had the idea of revenge in their hearts. But in order to avoid another sacrifice, he had to show a very tough attitude, not giving anyone a chance to discuss, and directly suppress dozens of people with force. With absolute force and authority, he ordered the troops to take the remains of the deceased compatriots and withdraw to Konoha. But he also knew clearly that after this incident, the relationship between Konoha and Uchiha was even more difficult to reconcile. On the other side, King led the surprise attack troops to retreat towards the coastline. After finding that Shunshin Shisu showed no signs of chasing, he breathed a sigh of relief. When they crossed the Konoha defense line again, everyone felt much more relaxed. King used his Byakugan to easily find the weak defense area of Konoha and led everyone to rush out directly. By the time everyone in Konoha reacted, it was too late. He safely led everyone back to the Kirigakure camp. After settling everyone, King came to the command tent with a complicated and heavy heart. "Captain King, the 3 commanders have been waiting for you for a long time." Outside the tent, a Kirigakure guard said to him expressionlessly. "Yeah." King responded softly, lifted the curtain, and walked in. "What's going on, Captain King?" As soon as he walked in, he saw the commander behind the desk slapping the table and shouting at him. Obviously, the 3 of them had already known the news that the 7 ninja swordsmen were almost wiped out. King was helpless and immediately saluted and said they encountered a Konoha ninja who used an extremely terrible forbidden technique, and his strength suddenly increased, which led to the death of 4 ninja swordsmen on the spot. Since the opponent is so powerful, why is your surprise attack force still so complete? Did you not try your best to rescue? The second commander roared loudly. King smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that we didn't try our best to rescue, but that we didn't have time to rescue." "What do you mean?" the leading commander asked coldly. King wiped the sweat from his forehead and said carefully, "The 3 adults should know that those 7 guys are extremely arrogant, and I can't command them at all. This is not an excuse for not trying your best to rescue, Captain King." The third commander squinted his eyes. King smiled bitterly and said, "That's not what I meant. I mean that the 7 of them didn't listen to orders and were not with us at all. Instead, they rushed to Konoha in advance, which led to our subsequent rescue being too late." Hearing this, the 3 commanders were stunned in their seats. The 7 ninja swordsmen relied on their own strength and were extremely arrogant. They had experienced this before, so King's words were highly credible. However, they never expected that this group of guys would disobey orders and leave the team without permission, which would cause such serious consequences. After a long silence, the leading commander sighed and said, "Have they taken back their ninja swords?" King nodded, took out a scroll, and put it on the desk, and whispered, "The ninja swords of the 4 people who died in the battle are all here. By the way." The second commander seemed to remember something and asked again, "Where are the other 2? According to your message, 4 of the 7 ninja swordsmen were killed in the battle and 1 was seriously injured. What about the remaining 2? Kuroho Reiga and Biwajuzo fled in the face of the enemy, and they probably won't come back." King lowered his head and once again told a shocking news. Chapter 77 Accountability. "What?" Upon hearing the news, the 3 people present suddenly jumped up in anger. One of the commanders was so angry that he broke a corner of his desk. Originally, they guessed that the 2 people should have been captured by Konoha, and they were thinking about how to formulate a suitable rescue plan, get them out, and reduce the losses of this strategic plan failure. Now it seems that they all worried in vain. These 2 cowardly bastards. Perhaps the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. A commander slammed the table again. Scared King next to him, he shivered involuntarily. "Forget it." The second commander sighed and motioned his 2 companions to sit down. He said helplessly, "Things have come to this. What's the point of being angry? Let's think about how to reply to the Kirigakure village." Before the plan was actually implemented, the Kirigakure's top force, the 7 ninja swordsmen, had 4 deaths and 2 defected. It can be said that they were almost wiped out. With such a heavy loss, he really didn't know how to report it. "Yeah. How should we reply?" The third commander sighed and sat down immediately. "Captain King, what do you think?" The first commander sat down slowly and looked at him deeply. Hearing this, the other 2 seemed to have thought of something and all cast meaningful glances at the masked young man in the tent. "Oh no, these 3 old bastards want to put all the responsibility on me." Seeing the 3 people's bad eyes, King immediately understood what they were up to. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and hurriedly said, "On our way back, we were chased by a Konoha army of hundreds of people. We relied on the terrain of a canyon and ambushed them. At a negligible cost, we wiped them all out. This is a battle report." As he said this, he took out a document from his pocket and put it on the desk. With such a conspicuous achievement, even if these 3 old guys shirked their responsibilities, the higher-ups would not punish him too much. "Oh." Hearing this, the leading commander showed a bit of surprise, pulled the document over, flipped through it, and said, "You killed hundreds of people at the cost of a dozen people, which is a great victory. Rare." After saying that, He handed the document to his companion next to him. After the other two commanders flipped through it, their ugly faces, because of the annihilation of the 7 ninja swordsmen, also eased a lot. At least, this time the loss was so great, it was not all in vain. There is something to explain in the reply to the Kirigakure village. Okay, you go down. Sending King away, the three began to summarize the battle report nervously, and then send it back to the Kirigakure village. The next morning, the Kirigakure Operations Command received a reply from the Kirigakure village. The letter did not explicitly mention the accountability for the losses of the 7 ninja swordsmen this time, but instead asked the front line to send the seriously injured Ziguashin Puffer Ghost back to the Kirigakure village for recuperation. The three people understood that this was a compromise of the Kirigakure high level to the current situation. The dead ninja swordsman was already a useless dead man, and now the war on the front line was stalemate, and the water country was in chaos. It was the time to use people, so they did not want to pursue the irreparable loss. In addition, the letter mentioned one thing. The goal of cooperating with Iwagakure to capture Konoha remained unchanged, but the plan was adjusted again. It was required to transfer some personnel from the front line to the western battlefield for support, and it was clearly instructed that the person who led the support team was AO. It seems that the guys above are not as magnanimous as they seem. After reading the letter, the leading commander sneered unceremoniously. Although the letter did not mention any accountability, it pointed out that AO, who led the team last time, would lead the team again. This was obviously not a coincidence. Moreover, the western battlefield was a three-way battle between Konoha, Sand Village, and Iwagakure, and the severity of the war was far greater than their eastern battlefield. Sending people all the way to support the allied Iwagakure was obviously not a good job. They even chose King as the leader. If they said there was no intention of punishment, they would not believe it. The second commander was thankful. Fortunately, the three of us had anticipated this and put most of the responsibility on that unlucky guy. Otherwise, once the war is over, we don't know how they will trip us up. The third commander shook his head and whispered, "Don't be too happy too soon. No one is stupid. They are not that easy to fool. No action now does not mean no action in the future, so be careful." Yes, be careful. The leading commander also nodded. Soon, King received the command from the headquarters and learned about the strategic plan to lead people to support Iwagakure. He didn't say much and immediately took on the task. That night, after gathering all the people, he led everyone north. In order to prevent being discovered and blocked by Konoha, he planned to cross the land of hot springs, the land of fields, the land of iron, and the land of Taki to support Iwagakure. "Captain, why do we have to rush over there from so far to provide support? Can't we call other people?" Mediterumi complained on the way. Hearing this, King twitched his lips, did not answer, but quickened his pace. He knew that this was a punishment from above. What's wrong with the captain? He looks unhappy. Mediterumi approached Qishuang and asked in a low voice. Qishuang rolled her eyes at her and said, "You also know that rushing over there from so far to provide support is a tough job. There's no way the captain can be happy." "But I always feel that the captain is not unhappy because of this," Mediterumi said with a frown. Qishuang felt a little toothache when she heard this. Is a woman's intuition really that accurate? He couldn't help but think secretly. The superiors asked Captain King to lead the team to provide support. Of course, he knew that it was not as simple as simply providing support, and he also knew that Captain King could not refuse. Because this was a punishment from the superiors for the loss of the 7 ninja swordsmen last time. If Team Leader King refuses this time, the next time will not be such an easy task. It would be strange if King could be happy. Of course, he couldn't say these words about dismantling the leadership platform, let alone let others know. The rest of the people who knew the whole story naturally kept silent. Then, he had to smile and say to the little girl, "You think too much. You'd better pay attention to your feet. Don't cry if you fall later. Humph. If you really fall, I'll let you carry me." Terumi Meri said with a pout. "Then it's not my turn to carry you." Qishuang shook her head, glanced back playfully, and joked, "Look, there are many uncles waiting to carry you." Terumi Mei subconsciously turned around, but saw several guys with excited faces, staring at her feet with burning eyes, as if they were looking forward to something. She was frightened and stumbled a few steps. After hearing a few sighs from the back, she was so shocked that she quickly collected her thoughts and dared not joke with Qishuang anymore, for fear that she would really fall and be carried on the back of those guys with ulterior motives. Chapter 78 Arrival. After hurrying along the way, Qishuang and others finally arrived at the land of grass around dawn. In order to make his troops achieve the effect of surprise, King used the Byakugan to search, carefully avoiding the eyes of various forces, and then quietly found an Iwagakure ninja, and led everyone into the frontline camp of Iwagakure. Soon, the Iwagakure headquarters allocated a temporary station for the Kirigakure troops in a corner of the camp. Why are there Kirigakure ninjas here? A Kirigakure ninja whispered outside the Kirigakure's temporary station. A group of Kirigakure ninjas appeared in the Iwagakure camp, and everyone was curious. It seems that they should be reinforcements sent by Kirigakure village? Someone speculated in a low voice. Kirigakure and Iwagakure are now in a wartime alliance. If these people are reinforcements sent by Kirigakure, it makes sense. Don't look at what you shouldn't look at, and shut up if you shouldn't say anything. Outside the temporary station, a guarding Iwagakure glared at the onlookers and scolded them harshly. Although Kirigakure and Iwagakure are allies, the Kirigakure ninjas are not Iwagakure ninjas after all, so they were sent to guard the temporary station of Kirigakure ninjas. One is to keep an eye on the Kirigakure ninjas to prevent them from doing anything wrong. The other is to stop other curious Iwagakure ninjas from contacting the Kirigakure ninjas casually, to prevent any important information from being leaked. You can't even take a look. How stingy. Some people were scolded and felt dissatisfied. What did you say? The Iwagakure ninja asked loudly with a solemn face. Seeing that the other guards Iwagakure ninjas all showed extremely serious expressions, as if they were about to fight if they disagreed, the people watching the excitement around them all shrank their necks, dared not say anything more, and left the temporary station of Kirigakure ninjas in disgrace. In the temporary station, Terumi moved her sleeping bag next to Nanashiro, turned over, and asked curiously, "What tasks do you think the Iwagakure ninja commanders will assign us?" Not long after they settled down, King, as the leader of their unit, was immediately called over by the Iwagakure ninja headquarters. Although she didn't know the specific reason why the other party summoned Captain King, she still understood that they were going to assign combat tasks to them. After all, they came all the way here, not for sightseeing. After a night of travel, Qishuang was exhausted and had no intention of paying attention to her. Zabuza next to him was already snoring softly. He turned over, turned his back to the little girl, and said in a daze, "I'm not a god, how can I know everything?" Suddenly coming to a new environment, although she was tired, Terumi still didn't feel sleepy at all. She forced Qishuang to turn over, grabbed her little ear, like a naughty baby, and said angrily, "I don't care, if you don't say something to satisfy me, you can forget about sleeping." The sudden pain in her ear made Qishuang's scalp numb, and she lost all her sleepiness in an instant. He suddenly opened his eyes, took a breath of cold air, cried out in pain, slapped the little hand that was grabbing him, and said, "Be gentle, it really hurts. Who told you to ignore me?" Terumi curled up in the sleeping bag and pouted. Looking at her like that, if he really didn't say anything, he was afraid he really wouldn't be able to sleep. Thinking of this, Qishuang calmed down and whispered, "Although Kirigakure and Iwagakure are allies, we are Kirigakure ninjas after all, not Iwagakure ninjas. They are still on guard and cautious about us. You can see something from the Iwagakure guards outside this temporary camp." "Ah, what can you see?" Terumi asked in surprise. She still knew very little about the adult world. Qishuang sighed and continued, "The group of Iwagakure guards outside are our guards on the surface, to prevent other Iwagakure ninjas from disturbing us, but they are our monitors in reality. The top Iwagakure ninjas have been keeping an eye on our actions." Hearing this, Terumi couldn't help but shrink back into her sleeping bag, and asked again, "Then, will they use us as cannon fodder?" "It's not impossible." Qishuang twitched her lips, feeling helpless. He guessed that Captain King was transferred here in large part because of the loss of the 7 ninja swordsmen last time. As for the three of them, they were completely dragged down by King and suffered an unprovoked disaster. The higher-ups just transferred the three of them here with the team leader, and it is very likely that they didn't even look at them. This trip was really unfair. What should we do? Why don't we let the captain send a message back to the Hidden Mist village to apply for a transfer back? Terumi Mei asked innocently with her green eyes open. Qishuang reached out and rubbed her little head, shaking her head and said, "War is not a joke. We can't come and go as we please." Feeling the warmth of the palm on her head, Terumi Mei blushed slightly. Seeing that the little girl was quite nervous, Qishuang comforted her again. "Don't worry. No matter what, we are also members of Kirigakure. No matter how excessive the Iwagakure is, they dare not let us die in vain. We have a total of 1,000 people. This is not a small force. Once they force us to change sides in the battle, they will not get any benefits. It's just that the tasks they assign to us will not be too simple." Oh. After hearing his words, Terumi Mei responded lightly and then buried her head in the sleeping bag and said no more. Seeing her quiet down, Qishuang suddenly felt sleepy and couldn't lift her eyelids. He closed it, his thoughts drifted far away, and fell asleep. When he woke up again, it was already afternoon. After searching around, he soon found the figure of the blue leader. It was unknown when he came back or when he woke up. Qishuang saw that he looked unhappy and thought that perhaps the Iwagakure had assigned him some difficult combat mission. "Captain, are they deliberately making things difficult for us?" Qishuang walked over and asked softly. King looked up at him and said slowly, "I have called together a few team leaders and are preparing to hold a combat meeting. You will know in a moment." "Oh." Qishuang responded and quietly stood behind him without asking any more questions. Not long after, Terumi also woke up. After packing up a little, she rushed over with great interest, curiously asking the leader about the mission assigned by Iwagakure. Of course, even Qishuang, who had always been valued by him, had not received any information from him, so how could King possibly say these things to a little friend like Terumi? Therefore, Terumi was turned away. Soon, Zabuza also woke up and stood side by side with Qishuang behind the leader. He did not ask as curiously as Terumi because he knew it would be difficult to get an answer. Furthermore, he was not interested in the so-called mission content. During these days on the battlefield, he only remembered one thing: just kill the opponent who blocked his way. That's it. This is the best way to complete the mission. So, he just killed people. Chapter 79 Blockade. About 10 minutes later, mist ninjas came to the tent where Qishuang's team was. Qishuang vaguely recognized several of them, who were the leaders of several teams. "I think these people are the captains of the teams that Captain King has called to discuss the battle plan," he thought silently. After everyone arrived, after a simple greeting, King took the lead and said, "Iwagakure has assigned us a task. I want to discuss the specific implementation plan with everyone. Is it dangerous?" Someone asked solemnly. "Yes." King nodded. Suddenly, there was an uproar below. Someone immediately cursed, "These bastards really have bad intentions and treat us like animals. If I had known, I shouldn't have agreed to follow." Someone began to complain and regretted it. Silence. A sharp shout suppressed the noise of the crowd, and King said seriously, "Although the mission is dangerous, it is not the most dangerous one, so everyone doesn't have to be so nervous. Iwagakure doesn't really want us to die. Then what do they want us to do?" Someone asked puzzled. King slowly glanced at everyone and said solemnly, "They want us to cut off Konoha's supply line. Doesn't that mean we have to go around to the back of Konoha to start?" Someone immediately reacted. No wonder King said that this mission was very dangerous. In addition to competing for the hard power of both sides on the battlefield, logistics supply is also a very important part of war. Once the logistics supply is interrupted, even the most powerful troops will not last for more than a few days. But it is precisely because of the importance of logistics supply that all parties are very concerned about the situation of logistics supply. If there is an accident, they will attack at any time. Therefore, attacking the logistics supply line is not much easier than breaking the opponent's defense line head-on. This is indeed not an easy task, but it is not a task that Iwagakure deliberately made them cannon fodder. King nodded and continued, "We have nearly 1,000 people. If we attack a stronghold at the same time, it will naturally be unstoppable. However, simply destroying a stronghold is still not enough to interrupt Konoha's supply line. As he said, he took out another scroll from his body and slowly unfolded it. Qishuang noticed that the map detailed the terrain and troop distribution at the intersection of the Land of Grass, Land of Fire, and Land of Earth. Especially on the side close to the Land of Fire, a very eye-catching line was drawn with a red pen. That should be Konoha's supply line, right? He thought secretly. The Hidden Rock village is worthy of being one of the 5 major villages. The intelligence work is very good. It has already figured out Konoha's supply line so thoroughly. Beside him, Mediterumi gently tugged at the corner of his clothes and asked in a low voice, "Tell me, why did the Iwagakure assign us such a task?" Qishuang turned around, looked at the curious little girl, and whispered, "Because they don't trust us." "Why?" Mediterumi raised her eyebrows and said indignantly, "We came all the way to help them, but they still don't trust us." Qishuang shook her head and continued, "Didn't I tell you before? Because we are not from the Iwagakure, so they don't trust us. If we join forces with them to fight, they will worry that we will stab them in the back, but if we leave our army of nearly 1,000 people unused, they will be unwilling to do so. So, they assigned us the task of attacking Konoha's logistics. In terms of our number of manpower, we are the most suitable to carry out this task. They can even save the support force. And if we are all transferred away from the front battlefield, we don't have to worry about us stabbing them in the back, and we can also destroy Konoha's logistics supplies. It can be said that they killed several birds with one stone." Then, Mediterumi asked casually, "But what if our mission fails?" Hearing this, Qishuang was stunned. "What's wrong? What did I say wrong?" Seeing him looking at her without blinking, Mediterumi couldn't help but blush. Qishuang scratched her head and said with a smile, "Oh my god. With 1,000 troops and clear map instructions, we can still fail to destroy a small supply line. Are the people of Konoha too strong? Or are we too incompetent?" After he asked this, Mediterumi also came to her senses immediately. If they can't complete the mission with such a force, then they are really a bunch of waste. On the other side, King pointed to the location marked with 5 red dots behind the Konoha forces on the map, and said slowly, "These are Konoha's 5 supply bases, which store a large amount of living supplies and combat supplies. Once they are destroyed, Konoha will not be able to gather enough supplies to supply the front line in a short time. By then, the main force of Iwagakure will be able to break through Konoha's defense line here, and the overall situation will be determined." Hearing that there is hope to defeat Konoha, all the Mist Ninjas showed excitement. As long as Konoha's western front is broken, then the eastern front will be broken soon. However, Qishuang can't be as optimistic as his compatriots. Because he is 12 years old this year, and Kakashi, who is the same age as him, is also 12 years old. And this year in the original work is also the year when the entire war situation has a turning point. Not knowing the worries in the hearts of his subordinates, King continued to say to everyone, "According to the people of Iwagakure, each base has about 100 people, divided into 2 groups, guarding it in turns for 24 hours. I decided to divide our troops into 10 teams, 2 in a group, to attack these 5 supply bases. Destroy Konoha's logistics supply in one fell swoop. Do you have anything else to add?" After saying that, he looked at everyone again. Everyone present shook their heads and had no objection. King was a little disappointed. He turned his head and looked at Qishuang behind him, hoping to get some useful advice from this smart little subordinate. Unfortunately, he was still disappointed. Qishuang shook his head in the same way. A team of 1,000 people was divided into 10 teams, which means each team had 100 people, and the 2 teams acted together, which meant that 200 people besieged 100 people. This was a tactic of overwhelming others with force, without too many fancy changes, and no fancy changes were needed. For Konoha, this was the most difficult situation to deal with. For Kirigakure, this was already a very good tactic. He couldn't think of a better suggestion. At least, before he actually came into contact with Konoha's supply base, he couldn't think of a better suggestion. After all, the war situation could change at any time, and no matter how good the plan was, it could not keep up with the changes in the situation. Since everyone has no objection, let's go down and prepare. We will set off in 2 hours. King sent everyone away. At this time, a roar sounded outside the camp. Qishuang, who had become a veteran on the battlefield, immediately recognized that it was the sound of the detonating tag exploding. Immediately afterwards, the roar of the detonating tags came one after another, like a lit firecracker, and it couldn't be stopped at all. What's going on? With full of doubts, everyone rushed out of the tent quickly. Bayan. King immediately poured chakra into his right eye and used the insight power of the Byakugan. I saw that outside the Iwagakure camp, flames shot up into the sky, smoke screens formed by the explosions rose and fell, and countless Konoha ninjas were like a tide, rushing towards the Iwagakure camp. It was Konoha's people who launched an attack. Chapter 80, Turbulence. Is Konoha launching a general attack? King was a little puzzled as he watched more and more Konoha ninjas in his Byakugan vision. Because, judging from the current situation, there are no less than 5,000 Konoha ninjas coming to attack. Even if this is not the total force of Konoha on the western front, it is almost there. However, when he was called by the Iwagakure headquarters to discuss the war earlier, he did not hear the other party mention that Konoha was about to launch a large-scale attack. It was precisely because the situation was stable and the news of the arrival of the Miss Ninja had not been leaked that they decided to sneak attack Konoha's supplies and consume the Iwagakure frontally. This sudden attack by Konoha really caught people off guard. They were directly blocked in the Iwagakure camp, and the exposure of the Mist Ninja was only in front of them. The plan to sneak attack the logistics supply while Konoha was unaware of their arrival was probably going to fail. What's the situation, Captain? Qishuang asked nervously. Everyone prepare to fight, King said to everyone with a solemn face. Then, several Mist Ninjas used the instant body technique to leave. The situation has changed, and they must hurry back to their respective teams. After the other Miss Ninjas had left, Terumi interrupted and asked carefully, "What happened, Captain?" Looking at the black smoke rising from the edge of the camp, King said in a complicated tone, "Konoha has launched a large-scale attack. We want to go out quietly to destroy their logistics, but I'm afraid it won't work. Why did they launch an attack at this time, when they didn't attack earlier or later?" Terumi muttered in great dissatisfaction. Originally, she was thinking that after successfully destroying Konoha's logistics, victory would be in sight. But the current situation is really not happy. Listening to the continuous explosions, Qishuang said helplessly, "The situation on the battlefield changes rapidly, and plans cannot keep up with the changes. This is a common thing. Don't be so discouraged." At this time, a rock ninja ran over in a hurry. "Captain King, the command center asked you to lead all the Mist Ninjas to participate in the frontal battle against Konoha. As for the previous plan, it will be postponed for the time being," the man said to King anxiously. "I understand." King nodded, and then asked, "Do you want us to disperse and fight freely, or defend an area separately?" "Southeast direction. The headquarters has ordered that the southeast direction will be handed over to you for defense. Once your people arrive, our people will withdraw," the man said solemnly. "Okay, I remember it." King nodded again. After the explanation, the rock ninja hurriedly left again. It seems that the rock ninja has not relaxed its defense against us at all. Looking at the back of the man leaving, Qishuang sneered mercilessly. The army of Konoha has already approached, and the rock ninja is still guarding against them, stabbing in the back. They dare not fight against the enemy together with them, but completely hand over a section of defense to them. It is really a bit petty. If they really have any bad ideas, they will directly abandon that section of defense and lead Konoha to march straight in, and the result will not be the same. The rock ninja's distrust is really ridiculous. Suddenly, he seemed to realize something and said solemnly, "Captain, remember to pay attention to the movements of Iwagakure at any time. We must not be abandoned by them." "No way." Terumi smacked her lips. She really couldn't believe that Iwagakure, as an ally, would abandon them, a group of allies who came all the way to support them. Hearing this, King patted the little girl's shoulder and said meaningfully, "Alliance is something that exists when it is needed. It does not exist when it is not needed. When you were in school, didn't the teacher tell you how the second generation died?" "The second generation?" Hearing the leader mention the second generation Mizukage, Zabuza and Terumi, many were thoughtful. That was the previous leader of the Kirigakure village. He died in the last war between the Kirigakure village and the Iwagakure village, and died together with the second generation Tsuchikage. If the former enemy can become an ally now, then it is not so difficult to accept that the current ally becomes an enemy again. Afterwards, after urgently gathering the Kirigakure troops, King immediately led everyone to the southeast of the camp. At the same time, in the back of the battlefield, in a pile of rocks, a young ninja with half of his face bandaged was trying his best to push a boulder. Because his companion was crushed by the boulder, only half of his body was left outside. "Stop, Kakashi. That's enough," the boy who was crushed under the boulder said weakly. Hearing this, the silver-haired boy with bandages knelt on the ground dejectedly, crying and blaming himself. "What, Jonin? What, Captain? All of it is bullshit. I'm really useless. If I had listened to you at the beginning and come to save Lin together." He was interrupted by his companion under the boulder before he finished speaking. "It doesn't matter, Kakashi. As long as I can save Lin, I will be satisfied. Speaking of which, I haven't given you a gift to celebrate, Jonin. Why not give you this eye?" On the other side, in the camp on the front line of Iwagakure, King led the Mist Ninja to replace the Iwagakure ninja on a section of the defense line, which surprised the Konoha ninja on the opposite side. Because they had not received any news that the Mist Ninjas were coming to support them, the sudden appearance of the Mist Ninjas caught them off guard. The tactics they had prepared earlier were mostly based on the fighting habits of the Rock Ninjas. Facing the sudden Mist Ninjas, they were at a disadvantage for a while. Many people even died directly. Soon, they adjusted their tactics and pulled back the disadvantage. The two sides fought fiercely for nearly an hour. After leaving corpses and various weapons on the ground, Konoha chose to retreat. The Rock Ninjas and Mist Ninjas who were hastily dealing with it finally got a breathing time. After arranging the guards, King took Qishuang and several others to find the material distribution point in the camp, ready to withdraw some military ration pills and ninja tools. Ninja tools need not be mentioned. Detonating tags, shuriken, these are huge consumables. Metal weapons such as shuriken are okay. Even if you pick some up from the battlefield and grind them, you can make do with them. But disposable ninja tools such as detonating tags are really gone after use. He must withdraw some from the rock camp and bring them back. There are also Binglian pills, which are fast-acting foods that quickly replenish physical strength and chakra. On this battlefield, for ninjas who consume a lot of physical strength and chakra, Binglian pills are irreplaceable. Especially in this situation, when it is unclear whether Konoha will launch a fierce attack again, it is of utmost importance to quickly restore the physical strength and chakra of the ninjas just in case. The significance of logistics supply lies in this. Congratulations to the birth of the first disciple level fan of this book. Moral model 2019.3.23. The amount of reward is not too much or too little. Why do I feel like you deliberately took the position of the first disciple? Bare your teeth. Chapter 81. Clouds. Why is there only so little? Terumi pointed at the ration pills in a large cardboard box and said angrily to the two Iwagakure ninjas at the material distribution office. Considering the size of the cardboard box, it should be able to hold about 600 ration pills. Although it seems like a lot, there are nearly 1,000 people from Kirigakure coming to support this time, and just these few ration pills are not enough. No wonder she got angry. Calm down, Mary. King patted the little girl's shoulder, looked at the two Iwagakure ninjas, and said solemnly, "We have nearly 1,000 people coming to support this time. Even if we just lost some compatriots, after deducting their share, this amount is not enough, right? After all, this is Iwagakure's territory. If something really happens, it will be very disadvantageous to them." Therefore, King suppressed his dissatisfaction and spoke to the two distribution personnel in a friendly manner. Seeing that the Mist Ninjas seemed to be led by the young man with eye masks, an Iwagakure ninja smiled and said, "Sir, we didn't deliberately withhold the supplies from you. It's just that everyone's consumption in the battle just now is very serious. Come here to collect them. With so much expenditure all of a sudden, the reserves in our camp are a little insufficient. So, we have limited the share of supplies for each team. We have sent a signal to the nearest supply base. You can come and collect them when the next batch of supplies arrives. Hearing that the supplies are temporarily out of stock, King was a little helpless. Konoha's offensive this time was too sudden, and Iwagakure's supply consumption increased dramatically. It was natural that they couldn't get them for a while. After all, he had encountered such a situation several times on the front line of Miss Ninja. Therefore, he expressed his understanding of such a situation. Then, he asked, when will your next batch of supplies be delivered? The Iwagakure ninja thought for a moment and said slowly, about an hour. However, Konoha's attack today is so fierce that those guys transporting supplies dare not be lazy, so the time for the supplies to be delivered should be even shorter. That's good. King breathed a sigh of relief. Temporary shortages of supplies are okay, but I'm afraid that Iwagakure supplies will not be delivered in time, which will be a big trouble. On the other side, Nanashiro secretly murmured, isn't it such a coincidence? He still remembered that the turning point of the Third Ninja World War was the Battle of Kanabi Bridge. Namake's Minato and his men cut off Iwagakure's logistical supplies, causing Iwagakure to gradually fall behind on the front battlefield. As a last resort, Iwagakure village chose to cease fire. What are you thinking about? Seeing his dull eyes, Terumi Mei asked curiously. Qishuang suddenly came to his senses and laughed dryly. Nothing, I was just wondering when we can go back. Go back? Terumi Mei was confused and said, didn't we just come last night? Thinking about going back so soon? This is not like you. Seeing the surprised looks from the people around him, Qishuang waved his hands and said, I just said that casually. I'm not really in a hurry to go back. Why are you looking at me like that? Seeing him anxiously explaining, King didn't say anything else. After the two rock ninjas distributed the rest of the supplies, Qishuang and others took the things back to the temporary camp. On the other side, in the command tent of Rock Ninja, a young Rock Ninja was reporting the battle situation just now to the two commanders. In the battle just now, our side directly died about 200 people, and 500 were injured and injured. Kirigakure. Okay, I'm not interested in hearing about Kirigakure's losses. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted impatiently by a commander. Then, the commander asked again, what did the intelligence department say? Have they found out the reason why Konoha suddenly launched an attack this time? The young Iwagakure immediately bowed his head and said, I'm very sorry, sir. There is no news from the intelligence department yet. A bunch of trash. Hearing this, the commander was furious and flipped the documents on the table, hitting the young Iwagakure in front of him. Okay, that's enough. Getting angry won't solve the problem. Another commander behind the desk spoke up. How can I not be angry? The first commander roared again. Konoha made such a big move, but their intelligence department didn't hear anything at all. They are all a bunch of good for nothings. At this time, the door of the headquarters opened again, and an Iwagakure rushed in hurriedly. Report to the Tsurs. I have something urgent to report. What's the matter? The first commander, who was angry, asked sternly. The man was stunned in place. He seemed not to have expected this situation. As soon as he came in, he was yelled at. It was like a tape recorder in his brain, and he couldn't turn it at all. For a while, he couldn't speak. Okay, you scared him. The second commander glared at his companion, then looked at the stunned Iwa ninja and asked tentatively, I remember that you seem to be from the material distribution department, right? Hearing this much kind of voice, the man finally came to his senses and hurriedly said, my lord, remember correctly, I'm the liaison officer of the material distribution office, responsible for contacting various supply bases and mobilizing supplies in time. The second commander was puzzled and said, a war has just ended. Shouldn't this be the busiest time for material distribution? How do you have time to come here? The man said anxiously, reporting to the two adults, we have lost contact with the logistics supply base. Lost contact? The first commander's heart tightened when he heard this and asked loudly, don't we have 4 material storage bases? Are they all lost? The man nodded with a serious face. Yes, 4 bases, all lost contact. How could this happen? After hearing this, the first commander seemed to be a deflated ball and collapsed in his chair. There is no doubt that the loss of contact with their 4 logistics supply bases was definitely not accidental. It was Konoha who took action. He knew very well what serious consequences would be caused by the interruption of logistics supply. It would not take long. As long as Konoha continued to launch attacks, they would be exhausted to death. Unlike the impetuous first commander, the second commander seemed much calmer. He calmly asked the visitor, "Have you told other people about this news?" The visitor lowered his head and said, "Except for a small group of people in our material distribution office, no one knows about this." "Very good, very good." The second commander nodded and continued, "You go down and tell everyone who knows to keep their mouths shut. You should know the consequences of this news leaking out. Otherwise, kill without mercy." Seeing the murderous look on the commander's face, the visitor said with a sad face, Then, what about the supplies? People are coming to collect supplies one after another, and our camp's reserves are running out." The second commander put his hands on the table, supported his chin, and said expressionlessly, "Tell them to hold on a little longer. The reinforcement from the Hidden Rock Village will be here soon." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82, Foglock. After sending the rest of the people in the tent away, the first commander asked his companion in surprise, "When did the higher-ups send reinforcement?" The second commander looked at him deeply and asked in return, "Do you think that the interruption of logistics supply can be concealed forever?" "Of course not." He shook his head decisively. Although he could still use various reasons to prevaricate the people below in the short term, the truth would eventually come to light. As time went on, the problem of material shortages became more and more obvious, and the matter could no longer be covered up. "That's why we need reinforcement, to stabilize the morale of the army." Looking at the dim light above his head, the second commander said in a complicated tone, "You lied to him?" The first commander finally came to his senses at this time. His companion rolled his eyes at him and continued, "I don't know how to predict. How could I have guessed that Konoha would take such a move? And how could I have notified the Hidden Rock Village in advance to send reinforcement? If I'm not lying, where would the reinforcement come from?" He changed the subject and said, "I may lie, but I will still send a letter to the Hidden Rock Village for help, but the reinforcement will come later." After that, he pulled out a piece of letter paper from the table and began to write furiously. Seeing this, the first commander said, "Then I will dispatch some people to the 4 supply bases to see. Maybe it will still be in time." Hearing this, the commander who was writing the letter for help immediately stopped writing and looked up and said, "Don't be silly. Although I don't know when the supply base lost contact, Konoha has made a deliberate move and will definitely not leave us a chance to save it. If you send people over now, they may be ambushed by others, which will only increase casualties." Hearing this, the first commander wanted to refute, but after thinking calmly, he felt that his companion's words made sense. Then, he said helplessly, "In this case, I will go down and make some arrangements. Let the troops shrink their defense line and be ready to retreat at any time." The commander who was about to write thought about it and added, "It doesn't matter if we retreat early or late, it's better to retreat while the troops are still relatively strong. If we wait until the supplies are completely consumed before retreating, I'm afraid it will be even more troublesome." "Okay, I'll make arrangements now." The first commander nodded and then went to the door of the tent. When he opened the door of the tent, the commander who was about to write seemed to remember something and hurriedly said, "Make good arrangements for those mist ninjas. It's time for them to make use of their remaining energy." As he said that, a hideous smile appeared on his face. "Don't worry, I understand." The first commander turned his head and smiled knowingly. Soon, the order to retreat was quickly issued to all the troops in Iwagakure. The mist ninja troops where King was were also the same. "Why is it so sudden?" Looking at the back of the messenger Iwagakure leaving, Mediterumi was surprised. "Maybe." Qishuang bit his thumb, and the ominous premonition in his heart became stronger. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration came to his mind, and he seemed to remember something, and hurriedly said to the leader, "Captain, take a look. Are the other Iwagakure troops still there?" After his reminder, King also realized something and immediately opened his Byakugan. His vision expanded, and the situation of the entire Iwagakure camp was pulled into his eyes. In the camp, except for some Iwagakure ninjas around their area, who were still slowly evacuating, the rest of the Iwagakure ninja troops disappeared. Obviously, the Iwagakure headquarters did not issue a retreat order to all troops at the same time, but issued it one by one, and left them, the Mist Ninjas, at the end. It was clear that they were going to use them as the rear guard and be cannon fodder. These bastards. King couldn't help cursing. Then, he hurriedly told 3 small subordinates, "Hurry up and pass the order down. The whole army retreat. Those untrustworthy bastards retreated before us." Hearing this, Qishuang shook his head helplessly. The alliance is really unreliable. He was not surprised by this result. If they could sacrifice their allies, it would only be a loss of face for the Hidden Rock Village. Afterwards, they would just admit their mistakes to the Hidden Mist Village and pay some compensation. From the perspective of the Hidden Rock Village, as long as the strength of the Hidden Rock Ninja could be preserved, it would not matter if they were a little mean. Sometimes, the so-called face is always not as real as the real benefits. Fortunately, the Hidden Rock Village has not done the matter completely. At least they notified them to retreat, and did not quietly leave them here to cover the rear, and finally die unclearly. This made him feel relieved. Meditarumi next to him could not care so much. When she heard that the Hidden Rock Ninja used them to cover the rear, she immediately became angry and her face flushed. How can these damn bastards do this? We came all the way to reinforce them, and now they are using us as abandoned pawns. She cursed. Stop talking nonsense. Quickly notify everyone to prepare to retreat. King said to the 3 people anxiously. Most of the rock ninjas had already evacuated, leaving only a small number of them, and the mist ninjas behind. If they happened to encounter another attack from Konoha, they would not be able to hold out for long, and everyone would die here. Right now, the sooner they evacuate, the safer they will be. Knowing the urgency of the matter, the 3 of them did not delay any longer and immediately conveyed the order to retreat to each team. After everyone spread the word, within a few minutes, all the Mist Ninjas learned of the order to retreat. Fortunately, Konoha seemed to have not yet completely rested, and did not launch another attack until the Mist Ninjas packed up their luggage. After gathering the Mist Ninja troops, King immediately prepared to lead them to the next camp, notified by the Rock Ninjas. Looking at the empty camp, Qishuang's heart moved, and he said to the leader King, "Captain, our retreat is much later than the Rock Ninja for a long time, and it is very likely that we will be caught up by the people of Konoha. Why not, before we leave, use the mist hidden technique to cover the entire camp? Let them not know the truth in the camp, and dare not attack rashly, which can buy us some time." King immediately nodded in agreement, and hurriedly ordered everyone, all those who know the mist hidden technique, come out and use the fog to cover the entire camp together. Then, nearly 100 ninjas walked out of the Mist Ninja Corps. They were all ninjas who learned the mist hidden technique. Among them, Qishuang and his 3 people were also included. The mist hidden technique is a high-level concealment technique of the hidden mist village. Although it is not a particularly powerful forbidden technique, it is not something that is common on the street. Not everyone can learn it. In addition to the master-apprentice teaching and family inheritance, ordinary ninjas who want to learn can only obtain it from the ninjutsu collection of the hidden mist village. Even Ninashiro had to kill many Konoha ninjas on the battlefield and make certain contributions before he was taught. In this Mist Ninja army of nearly 1,000 people, there are nearly 100 people who can use this mist hidden technique, which is already a very high ratio. Water style, mist hidden technique, water style, mist hidden technique. Nearly 100 mist ninjas stood in the front of the team and performed ninjutsu together. Thick fog appeared out of thin air, and in an instant, it completely enveloped the camp with a radius of hundreds of meters. At a glance, the whole place was white. People who didn't know it suddenly broke in. I'm afraid they would think they flew into the sky and landed on the white clouds. Retreat. With King's order, the Mist Ninjas followed him out of the rock hidden camp in an orderly manner. Chapter 83 Speculations. When the Konoha ninjas launched another attack, the Iwagakure camp had already disappeared, and there was only a vast fog in the original place, and nothing could be seen clearly. Even the sound of people's activities was gone, and it was so quiet that it was scary. What was even more surprising was that the fog covered an area of hundreds of meters, but it just enveloped the Iwagakure camp. If it was said that this was a naturally formed fog, absolutely no one would believe it. Obviously, it was man-made. A Konoha ninja immediately thought of the Kirigakure ninjas who had appeared on the Iwagakure defense line before. Their signature ninjutsu, the Kirigakure no Jutsu, happened to create a foggy environment. For this speculation, most of the companions agreed. Since they knew that the foggy environment was man-made, the Konoha ninjas did not rush in. Because they all knew that the Kirigakure ninjas were good at assassinating in such a foggy environment. Then, they quickly found several perception-type ninjas to explore the situation in the fog. A man with white hair and red marks on his face, like tear marks, asked several people, "What's the situation?" "Nothing can be sensed." A perception ninja shook his head. "Me too." Another perception ninja shook his head. Then, the rest of the people gave the same answer. "Since there is no enemy, then we will." Just as the white-haired man was about to wave his hand to signal an attack, another man with fair skin and purple eyeshadow next to him pressed down his raised hand. He only heard his hoarse voice slowly saying, "If there is no one, then why did they leave such a thick fog?" And it just happened to cover the entire camp. As he said that, he stretched out a long tongue, licked his lips, and showed a strange smile. But so many perception ninjas didn't notice the existence of the enemy. The white-haired man looked helplessly at the several perception companions next to him who were called by him to investigate. It made several people at a loss and embarrassed. It was really shameful for them to be entrusted with an important task, but they didn't find anything. The man with purple eyeshadow looked at those people sarcastically, and then said, "Their perception ability is still far inferior to the Byakugan of the Hyuga family. I can come up with 5 ways to deceive their perception right now. Do you believe it? You don't think that the Hidden Mist Village, one of the 5 major villages, can't even deal with this, right?" Jiraiya. After saying that, he let go of the other's arm, and looked at his companion in front of him with a smile. "Then what do you want to do, Orochimaru?" Without continuing to argue about those useless things, the white-haired man named Jiraiya asked solemnly. Looking at the vast expanse of white fog in front of him, the man with purple eyeshadow known as Orochimaru said meaningfully, "This mist hidden technique is an extremely sophisticated concealment technique of the Hidden Mist Village. The caster can use it to hide his own chakra fluctuations." Then, he glanced at the sensory ninjas and said, "Although professional sensory ninjas are not affected by the fog, it is not impossible for the Hidden Mist Village to make some improvements to this ninjutsu, or develop some new stuff that can deceive the perception of sensory ninjas. I just want to hear the solution now, not nonsense, Orochimaru." Jiraiya put a hand on the shoulder of his companion with purple eyeshadow and said solemnly, "You should understand what this war means to Konoha. Minato has cut off their logistical supplies. We must hurry and defeat them. If they survive until the arrival of the reinforcement from the Hidden Mist Village, all the sacrifices today will be in vain. You are always so impetuous." Orochimaru shook his head, lifted the big hand on his shoulder, and said slowly, "Although there is no specific technique that can break this mist hidden technique in the ninja world, it does not mean that there is no way to deal with this technique." Looking at his companions who still did their own thing, Jiraiya suppressed his anger and said word by word, "Tell me how to do it." Orochimaru smiled evilly, turned his head and said, "Although this fog is not real natural water mist, it also has the characteristics of water. It only needs to be heated at high temperature, and it will naturally disappear." As he said that, he stretched out a white palm, with a smile on his face, and squeezed it from a distance towards the camp of the hidden rock, as if he could easily crush it. "High temperature?" Jiraiya thought for a while, then reacted, and said in surprise, "You mean to use fire attack? The way to create high temperature is to use fire attack." Orochimaru shook his head and continued, "After all, the fog was created by the ninja's ninjutsu. If we use ordinary fire attacks, we don't know how long it will take to get rid of the fog. Just use fire escape. No matter what they are planning, just use fire escape. to cover the entire camp. It can not only get rid of the fog in one fell swoop, but also clean up their tricks. If they are really lying in ambush inside and waiting for us to go in, that would be great. As he said this, a smug smile appeared on his face. After hearing this, Jiraiya agreed with it and immediately said to the Konoha ninjas behind him, all the ninjas who can use fire escape, step out. Then, after a noisy sound of footsteps, more than 100 ninjas stood up. Jiraiya put his right thumb into his mouth and cut it while making a seal. He said, I will count to 3, and then you will use the most extensive fire ninjutsu to attack the Iwagakure camp in the fog. After that, he used the cut right thumb to draw a bloody mark on the palm of his left hand, and then pressed his left palm to the ground. Summoning technique black rune marks appeared under his palm and were printed on the ground, spreading to the surroundings. A white smoke screen rose from his side, and then a huge, more than 10 meters high red toad appeared on the ground like a hill. Jiraiya and Orochimaru stood on its head. Hey, Jiraiya, why is this guy standing on my head? The toad turned his eyes and stared at the two people above his head, saying in a rather unhappy tone, it is called Gamma Bunter, and it is not on the same page with Orochimaru's summoning contract beast, Mang Snake. After all, they are natural enemies. In addition, Orochimaru himself is also an expert in playing with snakes, so it doesn't like Orochimaru very much. Ignoring its temper, Jiraiya solemnly said, Bunter, prepare the oil. Seeing that he didn't explain at all, and the atmosphere around him was not right, Gamma Bunter muttered helplessly, you really can order a toad around. Then, it rubbed its belly. Orochimaru, who was also standing on its head, didn't say a word, but squinted his eyes, quietly waiting for the moment when the fog would disperse, and the Iwagakure camp would turn into a sea of fire. In order to take care of his companions who were slow in forming hand seals, Jiraiya slowed down the counting speed. 3-2 before shouting out the last number, he quickly completed his own set of hand seals. One fire style, toad oil flame bomb. Gamma Bunter timed it, puffed his cheeks, and violently sprayed out a stream of muddy brown oil. At the same time, Jiraiya on his head spit out a flame. The flame and oil blended in the air, and in an instant, it turned into a huge wave of fire, covering the sky and the earth, and falling towards the camp in the fog. At the same time, the many Konoha ninjas who were preparing around also used their own fire ninjutsu. Fire ninjutsu, great fireball jutsu, fire ninjutsu, large fireball jutsu. However, Orochimaru, who was standing on the toad's head, suddenly turned pale. Smart people think too much, which can be embarrassing sometimes. A master can be defeated by a random punch, that's about it. Chapter 84 Shame and Anger. From this moment on, he finally understood that there was really no one in the fog. He thought too much. Because, if the people of Rock Village and Mist Village were really hidden in the fog, they would not fail to notice their actions outside, to use fire escape to cover the attack. But the other party noticed it, but did not react at all, allowing them to use fire escape to launch an offensive, which was extremely unreasonable. Therefore, he could only conclude that there was no one in the camp in the fog. Hiss. Countless fire escape ninjutsu, like red streams of light falling into the fog. The scorching heat suddenly made the surrounding air more burning. The white fog slowly dissipated, but they did not disappear, but were steamed up to the sky by the heat of many fire escapes. The Rock Village camp in the fog has been submerged in a sea of fire. However, the cries and begging for mercy that everyone expected did not appear. Only a lonely tent was burning quietly. Orochimaru's guess was thoroughly confirmed. There was really no one inside. Then, everyone stopped releasing the technique. HMPH. Seeing this, Gamma Bunter snorted coldly, took out a pipe from his waist, took a deep puff, and said depressedly, I've been tossing for a long time, but nothing has been achieved. It's just a waste of effort. Which bastard of yours came up with this bad idea? After saying that, it first glanced at the group of fire ninjas next to it, and seeing that they all cast their eyes above its head, it turned its eyes, and looked at Jiraiya above its head. You? It asked in surprise. This? Looking at the contempt in Bunter's eyes and the empty camp, Jiraiya hurriedly waved his hand and said, don't look at me like that. It wasn't my idea, it was his. As he said that, he signaled to glance at Orochimaru next to him. Smart guy. Hearing this, Gamabunta looked at the man with purple eyeshadow above his head with great contempt, and then lifted the summoning. A white smoke rose from his body, and then suddenly disappeared. Only Orochimaru, who was embarrassed and annoyed, and Jiraiya, who was extremely embarrassed, were left standing there. Okay, everyone, stop standing there. In order to give Orochimaru a way out, Jiraiya did not continue to talk about this topic. He waved his hand at everyone and said, since those guys are not here, they must have moved. Hurry up and search for traces around, and find traces of their transfer. How could so many people move together? It is impossible that there would be no trace left. Then, many Konoha ninjas scattered around the Iwagakure camp, looking for traces of the enemies remaining. And Orochimaru was immersed in the extremely contemptuous look of Gamabunta when he left, and he did not recover for a long time. He was one of the 3 famous Konoha ninjas in the ninja world, but he was actually despised by a toad. If this were told to others, no one would believe it. But this matter was really a fact, and it was useless to deny it. What was even more infuriating was not that he was despised by Jiraiya's summoning toad, but that he was played by his opponent today. He had planned everything and made such a big show, but the result was unexpected, and he was laughed at. It was like punching the air with all his strength, meaningless. In addition to being angry, he was more furious. At this moment, he just wanted to find the bastard who came up with the idea and use the fog to create confusion and tear him into pieces piece by piece. Soon, the Konoha ninjas found a lot of traces of the opponent's transfer. Jiraiya and Orochimaru immediately led people to follow the trail. On the other side, Qishuang and others were lucky. They were not caught up by Konoha's people until they joined the large force of Iwagakure. However, their good luck ended there. Not long after they joined, Konoha's ninja troops quickly caught up. As if to adjust their status, Konoha's ninja troops did not launch an attack immediately, but just kept a safe distance and followed behind. Seeing that they could not get rid of their opponents, the commander of Iwagakure had to order a rest on the spot. The long journey, coupled with the shortage of supplies, will only make the ninjas more tired, and they will not be able to deal with the attack of Konoha. Although they know that stopping is dangerous, they can only choose to take a temporary rest to recover their strength. Soon, while they stopped to rest, the Konoha ninja launched the expected offensive. The hidden shadow snake hand on the chaotic battlefield. Orochimaru opened his left hand to a mist ninja who was fighting with the Konoha ninja. Suddenly, 4 or 5 dark brown snakes emerged from the sleeves of his left arm and shot straight at the man, like arrows from a string. In just a moment, the 4 or 5 snakes were behind the mist ninja. Unexpectedly encountering such a sudden attack, the mist ninja was caught off guard and was immediately tied up tightly by several snakes. Or, even if he had been prepared, facing Orochimaru, one of the legendary 3 ninjas, his ending would not change at all. After tying him up, the long snake immediately shrank, and his body flew over involuntarily. Then, a cold big hand pinched his neck and lifted him up, and then a pale and weird face appeared in his sight. He recognized it at a glance. It was Orochimaru, one of the 3 ninjas of Konoha. I have something I want to ask you, little guy. Along with the hissing sound of the snake tongue beside his ear, a cold voice mixed in, and he saw Orochimaru showing him a weird smile. I won't tell you anything. Although he was very scared when he saw those hideous snake heads, he still forced himself to cheer up and decisively rejected Orochimaru. What a courageous little guy. Orochimaru smiled slightly, without any anger. It was just that the long snakes wrapped around the mist ninja opened their snake mouths, and the white fangs pierced the other party's tender neck skin like lightning, injecting venom into it. Then, the long snakes loosened and retreated back to the sleeve along Orochimaru's arm. Since you don't want to say it, then never say it again. Orochimaru loosened his fingers and threw the mist ninja aside casually. His face turned purple, he was foaming at the mouth, breathing in more than out, and he was already dying. If you don't want to say it, naturally someone will. Orochimaru said to himself, while his eyes fell on another mist ninja who was fighting. The last thing lacking on this battlefield is people. If he gives up this, he can find the next one soon. Besides, the battle between the parties is in full swing, and he doesn't have the time to slowly interrogate the mist ninja. He can still distinguish the priorities of things. Just as he was about to attack another Mist Ninja, Konoha sounded the signal to retreat. "Are you going to retreat again?" He raised his eyebrows, a little unhappy. And the Mist Ninja he locked on, after seeing the opponent retreat, also retreated in a hurry, without entanglement, so that he lost the opportunity to attack. As a last resort, he had no choice but to retreat with the other Konoha ninjas. Now everyone understands what random punches kill the master means, right? You're thinking too much. Chapter 85 Tilt. The second time they were attacked by the Konoha army. Because they lost the fortifications of the camp, and because of the lack of supplies and the fatigue caused by the hasty retreat, the losses of Kirigakure and Iwagakure were very heavy. Even if Qishuang didn't see the exact battle report, she could still get a glimpse of it from the corpses on the ground. Compared with Konoha's last wave of offensive, after this round, the proportion of Iwagakure and Kirigakure corpses lying on the ground increased significantly. The situation of the war began to tilt. "How are you two?" He looked at Meditarumi and Zabuza who were walking slowly. Meditarumi rubbed her hands and said with a tired face, "It's just some minor injuries, no big problem, but the physical strength and chakra consumption are particularly large, and I'm a little tired. I just want to have a big meal now, then take a bath, and have a comfortable sleep." After that, she aimed at a fallen tree trunk next to her and lay down directly on it. "What about you?" Qishuang looked at Zabuza again. Zabuza shook his head and didn't say much. Although he had no expression on his face and looked normal, his clothes were stained with blood, and he looked like he was fine. He was probably seriously injured. He was just holding on. Seeing this, Qishuang sighed and said helplessly, "I'll go get you some medicine. You two just wait here for me, don't leave." If they could find a medical ninja, it would be better, but their reinforcement from Kirigakure didn't bring any medical ninjas. And now there were wounded everywhere, and there were even many dying guys. The medical ninjas and the Iwagakure troops were simply not enough. At this critical moment, it was a luxury to find a medical ninja to treat Zabuza's injuries. What's more, they were from Kirigakure village. They couldn't even save the people of Iwagakure village. So how could they waste money on the few slightly injured Kirigakure ninjas? At this time, he still thought it was better not to make trouble for himself. It would be good enough to get some simple medicine for injuries. Going around the Iwagakure and Kirigakure ninjas who were resting in groups of 3 or 2 on the ground, Qishuang slowly approached the area where the medical ninjas were stationed. Just then, he heard a noisy voice. "You said the supplies are gone. How is that possible? Didn't you say before that you had contacted the logistics supply base to deliver supplies? Why haven't they been delivered yet?" "Yes. Why haven't the logistics supplies been delivered yet?" He looked in the direction of the voice, but saw a large group of rock ninjas stopping several companions who were distributing supplies. From what they said, there should be a problem with the logistics supply. "We really don't know." A rock ninja in charge of the distribution of supplies cried back. "Don't know? How could you not know? Don't you have a special channel to contact the logistics supply base?" "Yes, you must know the reason." The ninjas talked at once and were not satisfied with their answers. "Tell me, what's going on?" An anxious rock ninja directly picked up a companion in charge of the distribution of supplies. "Speak. Speak." After experiencing 2 consecutive wars in a short period of time, the ninjas were already exhausted and in a very bad mood. Now even their basic supply needs could not be met. For a moment, they were like a powder keg with a lit fuse, and they were furious and ready to explode at any time. Seeing many of their compatriots with red eyes, and some even took out Kune, like a group of beasts choosing to eat people, a rock ninja who was distributing supplies was frightened and immediately fell to the ground. He cried and shouted, "Our logistics supply base has lost contact. Konoha has already cut off our supply line. There is really no way." Hearing this explosive news, the crowd immediately exploded. "What? Logistics supply was cut off? Oh my god, we are dead." Everyone understood why the people of Konoha chased them relentlessly, but were very restrained. They did not fight them to the death, but fought and retreated and fought again. This is clearly bullying them, because their logistics supply has been cut off, and they want to wear them down wave after wave. At the same time, Qishuang was surprised and happy to hear this news. In terms of time, this time is very close to the time of the Kanabi Bridge War in the original work. In terms of the war situation, the Iwagakure side has been cut off from logistics supply, and Konoha is pressing step by step, and the situation has taken a sharp turn for the worse. The Iwagakure side is about to be eliminated. Judging from the current situation, if there is no accident, the war that has lasted for many years, since the defeat of Iwagakure will end. However, it is difficult for him to be happy, because the Kirigakure enforcement force is in his right on the Iwagakure side that is about to be defeated. This is the critical moment when Konoha launches a fierce attack. If he is not careful, he will be one of the many corpses on the ground. Then, he gave up the idea of taking medicine, and quickly turned away, because he knew that at this moment, the logistics supply was cut off, and the medicine in the Iwagakure troops was probably exhausted. Even if there was a little left, it was not a precious material that he, an outsider from Kirigakure, could get. Going to ask for it would only be a failure. Fortunately, although Zabuza's injury looked serious, he could still move freely. He thought that his life should not be in danger, so he was too lazy to ask for medicine. Before reaching the previous foothold of the three people, Nanashiro saw Meditarumi sitting on the tree trunk, waving to him from a distance. There was also an eye-masked ninja next to him. It was the blue leader who returned. Earlier, the Konoha ninjas had just retreated, and the blue leader was called over by the Iwagakure headquarters. I just don't know what they discussed. Is there something? Nanashiro quickly returned to the front of the few people, and asked Meditarumi curiously. I just heard an important piece of information. Do you want to listen to it? The little girl said to him solemnly. Zabuza and King beside him shook their heads, but didn't say much, just sighed secretly. Seeing this, Qishuang immediately had a guess in his heart. He snapped his fingers and said playfully, why don't you let me guess? Terumi Mei was stunned at first, then squinted her eyes and replied excitedly, okay. It was rare for Qishuang to come to her door and let her test her teacher once, so how could she not agree? But, it's meaningless to just guess like this, why not add some more bets? Qishuang raised the corner of her mouth, and suggested with a smile. Bet. Terumi Mei rolled her eyes, thought for a while, and then continued, if you guess right, I will do something for you. If you guess wrong, then you will do something for me. At the end, she added another sentence. Anything is fine, you are not allowed to deny it. You said that? Qishuang glanced at the little girl jokingly. Yes. That's what I said. The captain and Zabuza can testify. Terumi Mei said solemnly. She was very confident in herself, and had never considered that she would lose, so she was looking forward to seeing Qishuang's expression in the future, when she was extremely reluctant, but had to do things for her. Chapter 86 Bet. Beside him, Zabuza looked at the little girl with great pity, thinking, if you can beat him, the sun will rise in the west. King also did not say a word, but looked at Terumi Mei with the same regret. In terms of heart, among his three subordinates, only Nanashi is the most thoughtful. Terumi Mei and Zabuza combined are not as good as her. If Nanashi knew that she would lose, she would definitely not make such a request. In other words, Nanashi must have a certain degree of victory, which led to such a condition. And the naive girl Terumi Mei is still foolishly betting with others. If she can win, it would be a miracle. Now you can tell me what the information I have in my hand is. Terumi Mei said to Nanashi very confidently. Nanashi raised the corner of her mouth, and said to her jokingly, I guess it must be that the logistical supply of Iwagakure was cut off, and it was about to be defeated, right? Terumi Mei just said that she had just learned the information. It hadn't been too long since he left to get the medicine and came back, and he happened to witness the blocking of the material distribution personnel, and the breaking news of the logistics supply being cut off. For the current situation, the most important information is the fact that the logistics of Iwagakure were cut off. The important information that Terumi Mei has is most likely this. Then, the little girl's confident smile froze on her face, and her face turned blue and red, which was extremely wonderful. Why, did I guess it right? Seeing her little mouth slightly open, wanting to say something, but unable to speak awkwardly, Qishuang joked again. How did you know? Terumi Mei widened her eyes, and asked in disbelief. King next to him couldn't bear it anymore and hit him mercilessly. If you can find out the news, how could he not find out? If he didn't have the confidence to win you, how could he mention the bet with you? From the beginning, you had no chance of winning him. At the same time, Zabuza, who was resting next to him, also showed an expression of as expected, and his guess came true. Terumi Medi had no chance of winning from the beginning. Hearing this, the little girl suddenly shrank, like a prisoner about to be executed, and said to Qishuang with a dejected look, "Tell me, what do you want me to do for you?" Although she was very reluctant, she had no intention of denying it. After all, she had agreed to the bet, and asked Captain King and Zabuza to be witnesses. Seeing that Terumi Medi was so serious, Qishuang almost laughed out loud. However, he had no intention of giving up the prize of this bet. As for what he wanted Terumi Medi to do specifically, he had already made a plan when he first proposed the bet. Then, he turned his head and pointed to his face with his finger and said frivolously, "What I want you to do is very simple. Just give me a kiss. It would be a good deal to get a kiss from the future Mizukage." Hearing this, Captain King and Zabuza next to him were so shocked that they almost jumped up. Terumi was stunned at first, and then her mouth twitched with anger. She suppressed her anger and sneered, "Is one kiss really enough?" "Enough." Qishuang nodded and said proudly, "One is enough. I'm not greedy." After that, he nodded his cheek again, and the pride in his eyes was very obvious. Just when King and Zabuza thought that Terumi was going to lose her temper, she suddenly showed a very shy look and said shyly, Then you close your eyes first. So many people are watching. I'm embarrassed." Seeing this, King and Zabuza's jaw dropped to the ground. "Captain, you close your eyes quickly." Qishuang hurriedly greeted the two people who were watching, and then closed his eyes very consciously. When he thought that he would soon get a kiss from the future beauty, he was very excited. Beside him, King and Zabuza immediately covered their eyes with their hands, but there were two more curious eyes between their fingers. The proud Terumi was about to give her a kiss, and they were unwilling to miss this historic moment. Perhaps, many years later, this would become a very rich and interesting topic of conversation. The little girl walked to the little boy very shyly. Because the little boy was taller than her, she had to tiptoe to get on that face that deserved a beating. Just when King and Zabuza thought they were about to witness this historic moment, the little girl suddenly raised her right hand. Terumi is still Terumi. Zabuza sighed secretly. Since he joined the King team, he had been tormented by Terumi. He thought he could see Terumi's embarrassment today and vent all his resentment. Now it seems that he still underestimated her. Terumi is still the strong and proud girl, and she will not give in so easily. I said that there must be something wrong when things are abnormal. With Terumi's personality, she would never agree to make such a bet. In addition to being surprised, King's face had a hint of realization. On the other side, Ninashiro, who was closing his eyes, felt a familiar chakra breath approaching and smelled a faint fragrance. He knew that it was the perfume of Terumi Medi. Just as he suppressed the excitement in his heart and waited for the kiss of the future Mizukage, a strong wind swept across his face. Before he could completely recover, he suddenly felt a sharp pain on his face and flew out. Boom. There was another sharp pain in his back, as if he had hit something and finally stopped. He quickly opened his eyes and found that he had hit a tree trunk. Zabuza and team leader King beside him showed a playful smile. Not far away, Terumi Medi rubbed her right palm and looked at him angrily. Hiss. Then, there was a burning pain on his cheek. He took a breath of cold air and felt a little swollen when he touched it with his hand. Obviously, he was slapped by someone. Holding the tree trunk, he slowly stood up, looking at Terumi not far away and asked angrily, "Didn't you say that any conditions are acceptable?" "Yes." Terumi looked up at the night sky and replied nonchalantly. "Then why did you hit me?" Qishuang grimaced in pain, covering her stinging right face. "But, our bet just now didn't say that we can't hit people, right?" Terumi opened her eyes wide and said very naively. Then she added another sentence. "Besides, I didn't say I wouldn't give you that kiss. I just think it's not the right time now. I'll give it to you later." "Then when will you cash in the bet for me?" Qishuang asked, while rubbing her right face. Hearing this, Meditarumi smiled slyly and chuckled. When you become the Mizukage, I'll give it to you. It's the same as if you didn't say it. Qishuang twitched the corner of her mouth and moved to sit next to the two leaders of the king team with a dejected look. Chapter 87 Anxiety. Then, Qishuang leaned against the tree trunk and asked the leader, Captain, how is the situation over there? The situation is not optimistic. King shook his head with a solemn expression, glanced at the comrades who were resting in groups of 3 or 4, and continued, just as you have heard, the logistical supply of Iwagakure has been cut off, and the main force of Konoha is pressing forward step by step. It is only a matter of time before they are defeated. Iwagakure's headquarters. At this moment, a group of mist ninjas rushed over to the 4 people in a hurry. Then, the 3 people sitting on the ground stood up immediately, and Terumi Mei also leaned over calmly. What are you doing so anxiously? Seeing that the mist ninjas surrounded the 4 of them, King asked calmly. He noticed that most of the mist ninjas who surrounded them were some very powerful team captains, and they also had a certain say in their mist ninja army. Captain King, I heard that the logistics of Iwagakure have been cut off, and the supplies have been exhausted. Everyone is as anxious as ants on a hot pot. If Konoha launches 2 more waves of offensives, I'm afraid we will be wiped out. Someone said anxiously. Yes, Captain King, you have to explain it to everyone quickly. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the subordinates below will defect. At that time, the entire Mist Ninja army will face the crisis of collapse. Another person added anxiously. Then, the Mist Ninjas talked one after another, and it was so lively. Seeing that they were arguing more and more, and he didn't even have a chance to interrupt, King couldn't help but get angry and shouted, silence. After shouting, everyone was silent. King then said slowly with a dark face, I was just about to discuss this with you. Since everyone is here, there is no need for me to notify you separately. Captain King, please go ahead. The faces of the Mist Ninjas showed expectant expressions. Although so many of them gathered here to ask questions, under the pretext of being forced by the people below, they all had the same mentality. No one wanted to be buried with the Iwagakure, which was doomed. King sighed and said slowly, earlier, after the Konoha troops retreated, the Iwagakure headquarters asked me to discuss it. They said that the Iwagakure village has sent reinforcement, and we only need to help the Iwagakure troops resist Konoha's attack, and there will be hope. Hearing this, the people below started discussing again. After a while, another person stood up and asked King solemnly, excuse me, when will their reinforcement arrive? We have exhausted all the supplies here, and we can't hold on for much longer. Tomorrow morning, King said expressionlessly, and then solemnly said to everyone, please go back and calm the emotions of your subordinates, and just hold on a little longer. At this time, someone else stood up and said cautiously, Captain King, the defeat of Iwagakure is certain. I think we should take advantage of the gap in Konoha's retreat and leave quietly, instead of fighting to the death here. Hearing his words, there was silence all around, and the eyes of the Mist Ninjas flickered, and they were very excited. After all, no one wants to participate in such a large-scale battle, if they can avoid it. Choosing to leave may be safer than choosing to stay. King shook his head and sighed. Do you think it's really that easy to leave? The man said without thinking. Konoha's goal is to defeat the Iwagakure troops. Their attention is all on Iwagakure, so they shouldn't pay attention to us. Even if they find out that we've left, they probably won't stop us. After all, our departure will weaken the resistance of the Iwagakure troops. King shook his head again, looking at his companions who were eager to try, and said earnestly, Konoha's goal is to completely defeat the Iwagakure troops. They will definitely keep a close eye on the movements here, so our departure will definitely not be hidden from them. And after 2 rounds of attacks from Konoha, our troops still have about 700 people. Compared with the main force of Konoha outside, it's simply a piece of meat delivered to their mouths. They can eat us without any effort. Why would they let us go? Do they really think the people of Konoha are idiots? After saying that, King gave the man a fierce look, squeezing him speechless. The Mist Ninjas were not all fools. After listening to King's words, they calmed down and thought about it, and all of them came to their senses. Leaving now will only lead to faster death. Only by joining forces with the Iwagakure troops to resist can there be hope of survival? But, are we just going to wait for the Iwagakure reinforcement to arrive and do nothing? Another person stood up. King raised a finger and indicated, given the overall state of the Iwagakure troops, it should be no problem to withstand another wave of Konoha's offensive. When Konoha launches the fourth wave of offensive, that will be their demise. It will also be our demise. I know that no one wants to die here in vain, so I'll set a bottom line for everyone. If the Iwagakure reinforcement haven't arrived after Konoha's third wave of offensive, then everyone should run for their lives. As for whether everyone can break through Konoha's blockade, it all depends on fate. Hearing this, the Mist Ninjas breathed a sigh of relief. King at least didn't intend to let everyone fight to the end. Even though they knew that the survival rate of each person escaping was very low, everyone still held a glimmer of hope. Okay, you guys go down. King waved his hand to dismiss everyone, and then he seemed to remember something and added, I don't want any Iwagakure ninja to know what I just said. You must remember it. Understood. Understood. The Mist Ninjas nodded repeatedly, responded with knowing smiles, and then left one after another. Captain, is the situation really that bad? After everyone walked away, Terumi Mei asked with a worried look on her face. The specific situation is probably even worse. King raised her head and sighed, and continued, if Konoha is not afraid of casualties and wants to resolve the war as soon as possible, this third round of offensive will be enough to take down the Iwagakure troops and us. Ah, so dangerous? Terumi Mei was surprised. She knew that their overall situation was very bad, but she never thought that it would be so bad that it was a bit difficult to hold on to Konoha's third round of offensive. At this moment, a very noisy voice came from the other side. King and others looked over and saw that it was a group of Iwagakure ninjas surrounding the headquarters tent. It seems that the same problem has broken out over there. Qishuang thought gloatingly. Even their Kirigakure troop of just a few hundred people would get upset, not to mention the Iwagakure troop of several thousand people. If it is not handled properly, I'm afraid that the guys in the command center will be torn to pieces by the furious Iwagakure troop immediately. As he expected, the commander of Iwagakure spent a lot of effort to persuade everyone to calm down. After resting for a while Konoha had not launched an offensive, the commander of Iwagakure ordered to retreat again. Although this was not conducive to the tired people to rest and recover their strength, they really had no choice. At present, their logistical supply was cut off, and they could only be rescued by joining forces with the reinforcement of Iwagakure village as soon as possible. And if they want to shorten the time to join forces with the reinforcement, they can only retreat and shorten the relative distance with the reinforcement. Staying in place to rest and recovering a little more strength does not make much sense. Logistics. Chapter 88. War begins. The combined forces of Iwagakure and Kirigakure retreated all the way to the border of the Land of Grass, and the commander of Iwagakure ordered the troops to stop, because the Land of Earth was already behind them. If they kept retreating, Konoha's ninja troops would definitely continue to pursue them. By then, the Land of Earth would lose more than just the ninja troops. War brings only destruction and death. Once the war spreads to the Land of Earth, many innocent people of the Land of Earth will also suffer. Coupled with the destructive power brought by the war, the basic livelihood construction of the Land of Earth will be greatly threatened. The domestic economy will definitely suffer an unprecedented blow. Losing the war is fine, but if the war is brought to the Land of Earth, the two commanders will definitely die. Therefore, they can't retreat anymore. After simply building fortifications, everyone was finally able to take a breath and rest. It seems that after 2 consecutive attacks, their own consumption is a bit large, and the expected third round of Konoha's offensive has not arrived for a long time. Enemy attack. When the sky was just getting light, a shrill warning sound woke up the sleepy people. Qishuang turned over and looked up, only to see that the Konoha ninjas were like spiders, quietly crawling on the ground. The ones in the front had even sneaked in silently, with several corpses lying at their feet. It seemed that they wanted to sneak in and launch a surprise attack while everyone was asleep. Unfortunately, their movements were not smooth enough. Just as they sneaked in, dozens of them were discovered by the people of Iwagakure. Charge. Kill. Seeing that their actions had been exposed, the Konoha ninjas immediately got up, and no longer covered up, rushing over with killing shouts. Konoha's third round of offensive began. Without any hesitation, the Iwagakuren Mist ninjas, who still had the remaining throwing tools and detonating tags in their hands, immediately threw them at the Konoha ninjas who were rushing over. Unfortunately, the other side threw more ninja tools and detonating tags. There were sparks from the collision of shurikens and the light of detonating tags in the air. Some shurikens and detonating tags were intercepted in the air, and the rest fell into the troops of both sides. Some people from the Konoha troops, who came like a tide, fell, but more people fell from the Iwagakure and Kirigakure sides. Unlike the Konoha troops with sufficient logistical supplies, the various ninja tools of Iwagakure and Kirigakure were almost consumed due to the shortage of supplies. The gap between the two sides was seen as soon as the battle began. Ding ding ding. A short distance sprint is just a blink of an eye for a ninja. The Konoha troops, whose whereabouts were exposed, completely let go of their speed and immediately pressed on the defense line of Iwagakure and Kirigakure, engaging in close combat. Wait a minute. After blocking a rain of ninja tools falling from the sky, Nanashiro grabbed Terumi Medi and Zabuza, who were about to rush into the battlefield. Let go. Looking at the figure of Captain King, who had already started a confrontation with his opponent, Zabuza turned his head and roared. What are you doing? Terumi Medi also showed a puzzled look. Let's go over there. Nanashi pointed to the west, and then rushed out. Although he didn't understand what he was thinking, out of a certain trust, Terumi Medi gritted her teeth and followed him. Seeing that she didn't object, Zabuza had no choice but to follow reluctantly. The three of them were only at the level of Chunin. Fighting alone in this chaotic battlefield, the mortality rate was extremely high, so they acted together most of the time. As for Captain King, because of his level of Jonin and to increase the efficiency of the action, he chose to act alone. After all, this large-scale battlefield was too chaotic. If he was with Nanashi and others, he would definitely have to be distracted to protect him, and in that case he would be in danger. It would be better for him to act alone. Ding. Nanashiro, who was the first to enter the battlefield, grabbed the weapon of a Konoha ninja. Medi, Terumi and Zabuza followed closely behind, attacking from the left and right, and instantly ended the opponent's life. Then, Nanashiro pointed to the east, in the Konoha camp, where a white-haired man was killing people, and said solemnly, that is one of the three legendary ninjas of Konoha, Jiraiya. Medi, Terumi and Zabuza looked over, but saw that man tossing his hair, and then it suddenly grew a lot, hitting several unprepared Iwagakure ninjas, and making them spit blood. They immediately collapsed to the ground and stopped moving. Then many red-eyed Iwagakure ninjas rushed forward, but they saw that he rolled his long white hair back, and wrapped it all over his body. Everyone's weapons bombarded him, but he couldn't move him at all. Then, countless white sharp needles popped out from the white hair curlers, piercing the people who rushed forward. In just a moment, he killed several more Iwagakure ninjas. Such an amazing move frightened everyone, and frightened the surrounding rock ninjas so much, that they dared not step forward again. What a scary guy, Zabuza said solemnly. Then, Nanashiro pointed at a man with purple eyeshadow not far from Jiraiya and continued, that's also one of the three ninjas of Konoha, Orochimaru. Several wrist-thick snakes shot out from his sleeves. Those snakes aimed at the target and rushed forward, strangling several rock ninjas in just a moment. No rock ninja could stop him from moving forward, and no rock ninja was his enemy. Ugh, so disgusting. Seeing this, Medi, Terumi subconsciously took 2 steps back, revealing a look of disgust. For her, Orochimaru's tyrannical strength was secondary. What she couldn't stand the most was that his ninjutsu was too disgusting. When she thought of the countless dark brown and ferocious snakes entwined from her feet, she shuddered involuntarily and got goosebumps all over her body. It was so scary. Then, Qishuang aimed at a Konoha ninja and rushed over, continuing, they are too strong. Ninjas below the level of Jonin may not last more than 3 rounds in their hands. With them over there, we'd better not go over there. We don't know when they will kill us. Yes, I'll listen to you. Hearing this, Terumi Medi nodded repeatedly, no longer doubting Qishuang's judgment. Then, she asked curiously, how did you recognize them? Yes. Qishuang thought for a while and explained. Konoha is our main opponent, so I asked other people about the information of Konoha masters early in the morning, in order to prevent myself from provoking those terrifying enemies. At this time, seeing the three of them locking onto a Konoha ninja again, two Konoha ninjas on the side also joined the battle. The three of them gathered together and immediately surrounded the three of Qishuang. Without any tension or panic, the three of Qishuang quickly changed their formation, back to back, and made a defensive posture very tacitly. Little boy, don't blame us. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being born in Kirigakure and standing against us. A Konoha ninja said with regret. In a blink of an eye, it's almost 200,000 words. At the beginning, I thought I could finish writing the Ninja World War quickly, but the result was completely beyond my expectations. There are too many things to write. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 Tacit Understanding. I just hope that you won't become ghosts and haunt me. Qishuang said with a curled mouth. I hope your life is as hard as your mouth. Another person snorted coldly. At the same time, the three Konoha ninjas quickly formed a set of hand seals, and then held their right hands in front of their mouths, puffed up their cheeks, and blew out a flame. Fire style, great fireball technique, fire style, great fireball technique, fire style, great fireball technique. Three flames passed through the palms of the right hands, and then swelled against the wind, and instantly turned into three huge fireballs, wrapped in scorching air waves, squeezing towards the middle from three directions, blocking the three people of Qishuang in the middle. Fortunately, the three people of Qishuang did not act rashly, in order to use static to control dynamic, so as to facilitate timely response. At the moment, when they saw the fireball coming, the three people used the same ninjutsu very tacitly. Water style, water formation pillar, water style, water formation pillar, water style, water formation pillar. The three children, back to back, sprayed a huge high pressure water column at the oncoming fireball, resisting the opponent's attack. For a moment, the only sound in the field was the hissing sound of water being boiled and evaporated by the high temperature of the fireball. Seeing that their attack was blocked, knowing that they underestimated the opponent, the three Konoha ninjas immediately revoked the technique. After dodging the high pressure water column that broke through the fireball, two of them picked up kunai and rushed over immediately. The last one took out several shurikens and threw them at the three people of Qishuang to cover the other two. At the same time, after discovering that the three people of Konoha had given up the technique, the three people of Qishuang also revoked the technique. They were short of supplies, so naturally they would save as much chakra as possible. Looking at the two people rushing towards him, Zabuza didn't say much, holding the short sword, and rushed out immediately. As for the shuriken falling from the sky, he believed that the other two would help him deal with it. Because this was the tacit understanding that everyone had cultivated after fighting together for a long time. Dissolving style, dissolving monsters did not live up to his trust. Terumi Mei in the back spit out a mouthful of milky white mucus, which immediately stuck all the shurikens that were about to be shot, and rushed towards the last Konoha ninja. Ice style, ice binding style. Nanofrost's speed was a bit slower than Terumi Mei, but it was still timely. Just when Zabuza was about to engage in a head-on confrontation with the two Konoha ninjas, 6 white ropes suddenly shot out from the puddle on the ground and shot straight at the 3 Konoha ninjas. That was the puddle formed by the clear water flowing to the ground when Nanofrost and others used the water array pillar to fight against their opponents. The 3 Konoha ninjas never expected such a sudden change. Just as they reacted, the 6 ropes had already wrapped around their ankles. The man who was responsible for covering at the back was fine. He was standing still and was not affected much, but his other 2 companions were in a life and death crisis. The 2 of them were in a state of rapid attack. This sudden restraint was like a trip rope. Their feet sank and they lost their balance. They stumbled forward. At this time, the little mist ninja with a knife had already rushed to the 2 of them. They tried to raise the kunai in their hands to prepare to parry the upcoming attack. Unfortunately, it was too late. Taking advantage of the moment when the opponent's center of gravity was unbalanced, Zabuza raised his short knife and accelerated to sprint between the two of them, instantly cutting their throats. Boom. The two Konoha ninjas fell to the ground, holding their necks in pain, trying to stop the blood from flowing out, but it was all in vain. The red blood was like life, flowing out from the gaps between their fingers covering their necks, and it could never be saved. On the other side, the last Konoha ninja saw the milky white mucus rushing in the air. He wanted to hide, but the restraint on his ankle restricted his movement. He struggled hard, but he couldn't break the white rope. It was not until then that he realized that the white cold rope was made of solidified ice. No wonder he felt that the rope was hard and had no elasticity at all. Hiss. The milky white mucus poured down, and he didn't even have the chance to scream, and was immediately poured into a clay doll. Let's go. After getting rid of the 3 people, Qishuang took the 2 people to find the next target again. Because, in this chaotic battlefield, staying in place will only attract more enemies. They are not Jonin, let alone the level of the legendary 3 ninjas. If they are under constant siege, there is almost no possibility of escape. Look, what is that? After killing another Konoha ninja, Terumi Medi pointed to a flickering figure not far away and said. Zabuza and Nanashi looked in the direction of her finger and saw a young blonde ninja shuttling back and forth on the battlefield at an extremely fast, even incredible speed. The nearly 100 rock ninjas who surrounded him couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. They could only watch the man come and go freely in the crowd, harvesting the lives of his companions again and again, but they had no way to stop him. That terrifying speed was simply despairing. Is it him? Nanashi immediately recognized the man's identity. You know this guy too? Zabuza asked in surprise, pointing to the guy who was shuttling through the crowd like a golden light. Nanashi stared at the man, nodded, and said solemnly, that is Konoha's Minato Namikaze. I heard that his master was Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas. He is a recognized young master. How powerful is he? Terumi asked curiously. Qishuang thought for a moment and said slowly, as you can see, his best skill is speed. Although his overall strength may be slightly worse than that of the 3 ninjas, his speed advantage is enough to offset many disadvantages. In fact, I personally think that this guy is more troublesome than the 3 ninjas. Facing his extreme speed, the 3 of us don't even have a chance to escape. Let's go, stay away from him. After saying that, Qishuang retracted her gaze from Namikaze Minato and turned in another direction with Terumi. On the way, Zabuza rarely took the initiative to ask, what's going on with his weird moving speed? I can't feel his moving trajectory at all. The opponent's moving speed is very fast, that's right, but it's so fast that it's really unbelievable. He just saw with his own eyes that 4 or 5 rock ninjas formed a human wall to trap Namikaze Minato inside, but he still escaped without any sign, as if he appeared out of thin air at the other end. But the human wall of the rock ninjas was intact. He really couldn't understand how the opponent escaped without destroying the human wall of the rock ninjas. Having found a new target, Nanashiro immediately rushed over and asked loudly, have you heard of the second Hokage's Flying Thunder God technique? You mean? Hearing him mention the Flying Thunder God technique, Terumi immediately had a guess in her mind. Chapter 90 Search. Although Terumi was not from Konoha, she had heard of the famous Flying Thunder God technique of the second Hokage, even though she was in the Hidden Mist village. It was a time-space technique that could ignore any obstacles and move through space. Any distance made no difference to the caster. Just mark the space and the direction would change in the blink of an eye. However, the practice of time-space ninjutsu was extremely difficult, and there were only a few people in the entire history of the ninja world who could use time-space techniques. Since the death of the second Hokage, the Flying Thunder God technique seemed to have been cut off. Unexpectedly, she actually witnessed this incredible technique here with her own eyes. The terrifying speed made her completely unable to think of taking it. She even suspected that once she entered the man's range of movement, she would be harvested like grass in an instant. The lone Konoha ninja not far away saw Nana Frost and the other 2 rushing towards him and was a little scared, so he turned around and wanted to run away. But he never thought that Zabuza used the instant body technique to rush in front and blocked his way. Helplessly, he had to bite the bullet, hold the kunai tightly and rush forward, launching a fierce close combat. At the same time, taking advantage of the moment of the two people's confrontation, Terumimei followed closely, one on the left and one on the right, and thrust the kunai into the opponent's lower back. In an instant, another person was killed. Using the opponent's clothes to wipe the blood on the kunai, Qishuang looked at the flashing figure in the distance and said solemnly, "It is said that Namake's Minato not only learned the Flying Thunder God technique, but also improved the Flying Thunder God technique. Perhaps, even if the second Hokage is resurrected, it is impossible to surpass him in speed. So powerful?" Terumimei was amazed. So, Qishuang looked at the two of them solemnly and said helplessly, "When we meet him in the future, we must hide away." Zabuza didn't say a word, but the expression on his face was extremely unwilling, and it took a long time for him to regain his calm. Terumimei didn't object and nodded immediately. "Well, I'll do whatever you say." On the other side, Orochimaru, one of the three ninjas, was killing people on the battlefield. Every time he met a Kirigakure ninja, he would try to interrogate him and ask who was the bastard who suggested using the Kirigakure technique to embarrass him last time. Unfortunately, although there were nearly 1,000 Kirigakure ninjas who came to support, compared with the thousands of rock ninjas, the number was not large. In addition, many of them died in the first 2 rounds of Konoha's offensive, and now there are only a few hundred left. Hundreds of people were scattered in this chaotic battlefield with a total scale of more than 10,000 people, like a drop of water falling into the sea, and they could not be found at all. Orochimaru rushed for a long time, and only met 5. 3 of them were very stubborn, and committed suicide without giving him a chance to interrogate them. Although he asked about the other 2, they were unwilling to say anything when they heard the purpose of his questioning. He had no patience and no time to interrogate them slowly, so he killed the 2 on the spot and looked for the next target again. Not long after, he saw another Kirigakure ninja. "I hope this won't disappoint me." He licked his lips and rushed over. The legend of the 3 ninjas is so great that many people have only heard of it, but have never seen it with their own eyes. But in this battle, the performance of Orochimaru and Jiraiya made many unconvinced ninjas shut up. After all, what you see with your own eyes is always more real and more shocking than what you hear. When he saw Orochimaru rushing towards him with his eyes locked on him, the mist ninja was immediately frightened and abandoned his opponent and ran away. He really didn't want to face such an opponent with no possibility of victory. It seems that I'm lucky. Orochimaru casually strangled the 2 blockers with the long snake sticking out of his sleeves, and looked at the panicked back of the man, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He was not afraid of not being able to find the target for interrogation, but was afraid of spending all his energy to find some guys who would rather die than surrender. Because these guys are very determined, it is difficult to pry open their mouths. Under normal circumstances, he would have enough patience and time to interrogate slowly, but not now. If he wanted to get the answer as soon as possible, he could only start with those guys with weak wills. And the guy he just chose was so scared that he didn't know what to do before he even fought with him. He was not a man of strong will. He had a great chance of getting the answer he wanted from him. "You can't escape." Licking his lips again, Orochimaru stared at the fleeing figure, threw himself to the ground, and swam straight out along the ground with his limbs soft and boneless, like a real snake. The many rock ninjas around him took 2 steps back in fear. By the time they recovered, Orochimaru had passed through the crowd and had already swam a long way away. In just a few breaths, he had already caught up with the mist ninja who had fled earlier. "Where do you want to go, little guy?" A faint voice came from behind, and the mist ninja instinctively turned around and saw that the face that he had been avoiding was already behind him. He was just about to speed up and flee, but the other party seemed to see through his thoughts and accelerated first, like a giant python hunting, suddenly shooting out its front body. In an instant, Orochimaru was like a real long snake, tightly tied to his body, and entangled his hands and feet tightly. This horrible scene frightened no one to dare to move forward. "Little guy, why are you running?" Orochimaru stretched his neck strangely, moved his head to the front of the mist ninja, and asked jokingly, You chase me, how can I not run?" The man replied with a sad face, "How about we make a deal? As long as you answer me a question, I will let you go safely. Orochimaru made his voice extremely soft, making people sound very kind. For a moment, the fear receded, and the Mist Ninja's heart actually had a little more trust in Orochimaru. Especially when he heard that there was hope of survival, he was secretly delighted. My lord, what do you want to ask? I will do my best to answer. He agreed to the other party's request without hesitation. Last time, when you retreated from the hidden rock camp, who came up with the idea to use the mist hidden technique to cover the camp? Orochimaru asked with a smile. His tone was very kind, and he didn't look like the murderer who had just started a killing spree. Hearing this, the man was delighted and hurriedly replied, "It was Nana Frost. It was Nana Frost from the blue team." During the retreat, Nana Frost had proposed to the blue team leader to use fog to cover the camp and slow down Konoha's pursuit in front of everyone. Therefore, he just knew the answer to this question. Nana Frost. Orochimaru muttered to himself for a while, and then continued to ask, what does he look like? What skills does he have? Not daring to hide it, the man blurted out, he is an Ice Escape Bloodline Limit Ninja. Among our reinforcement, only he can use Ice Escape, and his characteristics are very obvious. Yes. Very good, very good. Orochimaru nodded. Then what you promised me, sir? The man acted very humble, and hadn't finished speaking, but his meaning was very obvious. Chapter 91, Collapse. Who do you think I am? Orochimaru looked at him with great disdain, then slowly untied his snake-like body that was wrapped around the other person, stood firm on his feet, and uttered only one word. Get lost. If he was not looking for the guy who made him lose face, he would even feel that looking at such a person any longer would be a waste of energy. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your mercy. The Mist Ninja nodded and bowed, retreated repeatedly, and immediately wanted to hide in the crowd and get away. At this moment, 2 more Konoha ninjas blocked his way. He was so scared by Orochimaru that he didn't dare to fight in front of the other party. He immediately changed direction and wanted to hide next to several rock ninjas not far away. Unfortunately, his words of abandoning his companions to survive were heard clearly by the surrounding rock ninjas. No matter where he goes, such a person will not be welcomed. If it weren't for the friendship of everyone's allies, they would even want to kill this shameful guy. Seeing that the other party wanted to come over for refuge and help, they didn't want to pay any attention to them at all. They all retreated a long way and pretended to be a bystander. The reaction of the surrounding rock ninja surprised the Mist Ninja. Just as he was stunned, he was stopped by 2 Konoha ninjas. He had no choice but to bite the bullet and fight the 2 head on. Maybe he was a little scared because Orochimaru was beside him, or he felt guilty for betraying his companions. The fighting skills that he was familiar with on weekdays felt so unfamiliar at this moment. In addition, he was outnumbered by 2, and 2 fists could not beat 4 hands. After just a few rounds, he was a little overwhelmed. Helpless, he could only fight back desperately while shouting to the purple eyeshadow man who was watching the fight, Lord Orochimaru, you said you would let me leave safely. Orochimaru stood there, hugged his arms, and said sinisterly, I did promise to let you leave safely, but I never promised to protect you from leaving safely. The way to life has always been fought for by yourself. I have given you a chance. As for whether you can seize it, it is none of my business. After saying that, he turned around, looked at the many rock ninjas around who were afraid to step forward, and walked over without looking at the man again. You liar, liar. Seeing that Orochimaru no longer paid attention to him, the Mist Ninja who was overwhelmed by the fear of death shouted hysterically. Unfortunately, no matter how hysterical he was, Orochimaru's footsteps of leaving still did not stop. Then, he looked at the many rock ninjas who were slowly surrounding Orochimaru and shouted loudly, save me, save me. However, the rock ninjas remembered the scene where he had just sold out his companions to Orochimaru in exchange for his life. No one was willing to pay attention to him, let alone lend him a hand. A few minutes later, he screamed and there was no movement. The man who abandoned his companions was eventually abandoned by his companions, and ushered in the end he had set. On the other side, after nearly 2 hours of fierce fighting, the 3 people of Qishuang were all injured and exhausted. After dealing with the last enemy in front of her, Meditarumi looked at the still chaotic battle situation and asked in confusion, why are the people of Konoha not planning to retreat? Konoha's first 2 rounds of offensives only lasted about an hour, and everyone thought it would be the same this time, but the result was completely beyond everyone's expectations. In this round of offensive, Konoha fought for a full 2 hours, but still showed no intention of retreating. She was really confused. Zabuza didn't say anything, but his face was also very ugly when he looked at the battlefield. Nanashi glanced around and said cautiously, I'm afraid that the top leaders of Iwagakure underestimated Konoha and overestimated themselves. What do you mean? Meditarumi asked in surprise. Zabuza also cast a questioning look. Nanashi was on guard and explained slowly, Iwagakure's logistical supply was cut off, and it experienced 2 consecutive rounds of strong attacks from Konoha. Both the number of troops and the state of the troops are far from their heyday, and Konoha took the initiative and must have made sufficient preparations. With the increase and decrease of one side, Konoha's advantage is much greater than they estimated. The result is that we are completely at a disadvantage on the front battlefield, and it also gives Konoha hope to annihilate us in one fell swoop, and they want to make a quick decision. This is also the reason why they haven't retreated yet. As he said, Nanashi clenched the handle of the kunai, his face very ugly. The current situation is really too bad. Hearing this, Meditarumi and Zabuza once again carefully scanned the battlefield and found that among the corpses lying on the ground, Iwagakure accounted for a large proportion, while the frequency of Konoha ninja corpses was far lower than that of Iwagakure corpses. Among the ninjas still active on the battlefield, the number of Iwagakure ninjas was much less than before the 3rd round of fighting, and the overall defense line of Iwagakure had also moved back a long distance. It was not until then that they clearly realized that the overall situation of Iwagakure was on the verge of collapse, and they could become one of the many corpses at any time. In a corner of the battlefield, a scarred Iwagakure commander anxiously asked his companions, where are the reinforcement? We can't hold on any longer. The Konoha guys have not retreated yet. They must be preparing to defeat us in one fell swoop. He was not afraid of death, but he was afraid that the Iwagakure troops would be completely defeated and the vitality of the land kingdom would be seriously damaged. Ahem. The other commander who joined him coughed twice, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said with a worried look on his face, I don't know. He had previously fought with a Konoha Jonin and paid the price of being seriously injured before killing his opponent. At this moment, he felt his steps were weak and even standing was a bit difficult. What about the Sand Village? Aren't they afraid that Konoha will completely defeat us and then attack them again? The first commander asked again. As early as after Konoha's 2nd round of offensive, the 2 of them sent a letter of help to the nearby Iwagakure village. Although the 2 sides are not in an alliance, it does not prevent them from asking for help from the Sand Village. They believe that the Sand Village will not fail to see the consequences of Konoha's complete annihilation of their Iwagakure troops. Once they lose their containment, Konoha will put all the energy of the Western Front on the Sand Village. By then, the situation of the Sand Village will only be worse than it is now. This is the confidence they have in asking for help from the Sand Village. The so-called diplomacy is nothing more than the word balance. The second commander coughed twice again. His face was as pale as paper, and he looked even uglier. Seeing this, the previous commander hurriedly supported him and asked with concern, how are you injured? It's okay, it's okay. The second commander shook his head and said with all his strength, as we expected, the Sand Village has replied and promised to support, but those cunning guys didn't mention when the reinforcement will arrive. Although these 2 parties were the protagonists of Konoha's defeat of Iwagakure, the Sand Village was so close that it would be abnormal if there was no reaction at all. So, I have to give the Sand Village a roll. Chapter 92 Luosha. The first rock ninja commander pinched his chin and thought for a while, then slowly said, they just want to weaken our strength with Konoha's help to balance their losses in this war. Ahem. After coughing a few times, the second commander said palely, that should be it. I just hope they don't come too late. After that, he sighed heavily again. On the southern border of the land of grass, a group of sand ninjas wearing grey light armor and ear covering hats were ready to fight. At the forefront of the troops was a man wearing a green hat with the word "Wind" on his head. That was the 4th generation Kazakage of the Sand Village of the Land of Wind, and the supreme commander of the Sand Ninja Army, Alyosha. Originally, with his respected status, he should not have been so casual to go to the front line, but this time was different. He was keen, and smelled the opportunity for a ceasefire. The Land of Wind is located in the southwest of the mainland. Although the territory is large, most of the territory is desert area, with scarce resources. The harsh environment has seriously restricted the development of the Land of Wind. To this end, they had to train ninjas in an elite way, and with limited resources, cultivate a force that could compete with the other 4 major countries. In terms of the total number of ninjas, they were similar to the other side, the Kirigakure village, which implemented a cruel graduation system, and they were all at the bottom of the 5 major countries. In addition, the wars in the past few years were all caused by the disappearance of the previous Kazakage, and the Sand Village was leaderless, which was taken advantage of by others. As a result, their entire battle situation was the passive defense side. This situation did not improve until Alyosha succeeded as the Kazakage, but it still could not change the fact that they had suffered heavy losses in the war in the past few years. Whether it was the financial resources of the Wind Country, the resources of the Wind Country, or the sentiments of the people of the Wind Country, they did not allow the Sand Village to continue to participate in the war. If they continued to fight, the resource-poor Wind Country would collapse. Therefore, after Alyosha came to power, he contracted his defense and tried his best to reduce consumption, preserve the strength of the Sand Village, and stabilize the situation in the Wind Country. But war is like a frightened galloping horse. Once the horse's hooves are loosened, it is not so easy to stop. He has been looking for an opportunity to cease fire, but the Sand Village, which was crippled early, has no say, and the 3 parties of Rock Village, Mist Village, and Konoha have no intention of ceasefire. He can only passively defend and hold on. Finally, he waited for this day. According to the war report from the front line, Konoha cut off the logistical supply of Rock Village, and Rock Village was defeated step by step. The war situation that has been entangled for several years is finally coming to an end. If he had proposed a ceasefire earlier, no one would pay attention to him, but now that Rock Village is about to be defeated, if he takes this opportunity to intervene in the battlefield of both sides and propose a ceasefire agreement, no one will ignore their opinions of Sand Village. At least, Rock Village dare not ignore it. Just as Rock Village is sure that Sand Village will send reinforcement, Sand Village is also sure that Rock Village will not refuse the ceasefire agreement. Because in this case, Rock Village has no possibility of winning. If Iwagakure doesn't want the war situation to get worse, it can only agree to their truce agreement. Only when the 2 defeated sides unite can they resist the powerful Konoha. When Sand Village and Iwagakure stand on the same front, Konoha will have to be very cautious if it wants to continue fighting. After all, this situation is completely different from the previous 3-way melee. Considering Konoha's own losses, Alyosha is very confident that, by intervening in this war, the 3 parties will reach a truce agreement. However, in order to make Iwagakure more determined to stand on the side of the truce with Sand Village, he must minimize the strength of Iwagakure to prevent it from having other little thoughts after surviving this crisis. Therefore, he must grasp the opportunity to intervene in the battlefield, neither allowing Konoha to completely wipe out the Iwagakure troops, nor allowing Iwagakure to retain too much strength. As several black shadows flashed in front of him, 3 more wounded Sand Village Anbu appeared in front of Alyosha. How is the battle over there? He pushed the windward hat and asked the 3 people in a low voice. In order to grasp the right time to intervene, he deliberately sent 10 members of the Sand Village Anbu to inquire about the situation. Now only 3 have returned. It seems that the others are dead. A member of the Sand Village Anbu lowered his head and said, more than half of the Rock Village troops have been lost. Konoha's 3rd round of offensive has lasted for nearly 2 hours, and there is no intention of retreating yet. From the looks of it, they should be planning to defeat the Rock Village troops in one fell swoop. Defeat in one fell swoop. Konoha's ambition is not small. Alyosha sneered. He knew very well that the commander of the Rock Village was not a fool. As soon as he found that the logistics supply was cut off, he must have sent a signal for help to the Rock Village. and with the marching speed of the ninja, 10 hours is enough to reach the battlefield from the rock village. Then, he looked at the horizon, that had already become bright, and said to himself, it's almost time. After a night, the reinforcement of the rock village were about to arrive. If he rushed over now, he could not only minimize the casualties of the sand village, but also do a favor for the rock village, which could be said to kill two birds with one stone. Then, he raised his right hand, and gave the order to the sand village troops behind him to march. All troops, attack. On the other side, a Konoha and Buu rushed to Jiraiya's side using the flash body technique. After killing several rock ninjas with a casual fire escape, Jiraiya turned his head with a tired face and asked, what's the matter? This large-scale melee is very exhausting for ninjas. Even he, who is known as the Three Ninjas, is a little exhausted after a long period of high-intensity combat. Report to Master Jiraiya, the Sand Village troops on the border of the grass country have been dispatched. The direction of the march is exactly our battlefield. The Enbu lowered his head and replied, are those guys from Sand Village still restless? Jiraiya frowned. They had long expected the actions of Sand Village, but they had no way to deal with it. Konoha was fighting on two fronts, and was seriously short of troops. Even the newly graduated genin were sent up, but it was still a bit tight. If they divide their forces to stop them, they will not be able to achieve the desired effect against the Iwagakure. If they allow the Sand Village to enter the battlefield to disrupt the situation, it will be extremely disadvantageous for Konoha. Therefore, after discussion, they all agreed that it would be more cost-effective to concentrate their forces to first cripple the Iwagakure troops. As for what kind of results can be achieved, it depends on the ability of Konoha. Go, continue to monitor. Wait until the Sand Village troops are 1000 meters away from the battlefield, and then come back to report. Jiraiya solemnly ordered him. It will take some time for the Sand Village troops to actually arrive at the battlefield. He can't give up the good situation in front of him, just because the Sand Village is about to enter the battlefield. Because, for every extra minute, they will destroy more of the Iwagakure troops, and the results of the battle will be strengthened. This is what is called racing against time. On the other side, Orochimaru accidentally discovered a very unique corpse on the battlefield. Because the corpse exudes a cold chill, and there is a layer of white frost on the eyebrows. Welcome to XXXX. The enemy has 30 seconds to reach the battlefield. The whole army is attacking. Chapter 93 Tracking. Why does this corpse look like it has been frozen? After clearing the enemies around him, he squatted down to check with full curiosity. There were 3 wounds on the corpse. 2 of them were very fatal, one on the lower back, and one on the chest. They were all caused by sharp objects piercing through the internal organs, which was the cause of death of the corpse's owner. The last wound was on the right shoulder of the corpse, and there was still half a 10 centimeter long ice cone left inside that had not completely melted. The ice cone exuded an astonishing cold air, freezing the wound. The blood just flowed out of the wound, and was condensed into red pearls. Even some of the clothes were frozen into a hard lump, because they were soaked in blood. Obviously, the white frost on the corpse's eyebrows was caused by the cold air left by the ice cone condensing the air. He checked carefully again, and found that the limbs of the corpse were much stiffer than other corpses of the same period. Obviously, this was extremely unreasonable. It seems that someone used the cold air of ice escape to corrode the victim's muscles, causing them to move slowly and reveal their flaws and be killed. Orochimaru came to the conclusion immediately. Very interesting, a very interesting technique. He slowly stood up with a happy smile on his face, as if he had found some new toys. Then, he bit his finger and gently scratched a bloody mark on his left palm, then quickly made a few seals, and pressed his palm on the ground. Summoning technique, the black curse mark spread from his palm to the surroundings, accompanied by a puff of white smoke, and dozens of black snakes appeared at Orochimaru's feet. My cute little guys, go find the caster of that ice cone for me. He ordered the group of black snakes at his feet. Snakes have a sense of smell far superior to that of humans, and his group of summoned snakes are naturally better than ordinary snakes. They can completely rely on the remaining breath on the ice cone to help him find that person from this chaotic battlefield. He still remembered that the Mist Ninja had told him earlier that there was only one person in the entire Mist Ninja Corps who could use ice release. As far as he knew, there seemed to be no ice release bloodline limit in the land of Earth, Rock Village, so that person was naturally unlikely to be from Rock Village. In other words, this ice release user he had never met was the mist ninja in a frost he had been looking for. The culprit who came up with the idea of covering the rock ninja camp with fog, making him lose face in front of everyone. Soon, several small snakes swam back. It seemed that they had found their target. Take me there. Orochimaru raised his mouth and gave the order to the small snakes, feeling very happy. On the other side, Nana Frost and others had just dealt with 2 enemies and were out of breath. Since they went to the front line, this was the first time they had experienced such a long and fierce battle. Wave after wave of enemies, endless, made them exhausted. They couldn't help but start to doubt whether they still had the strength to deal with the next enemy who came to them. I can't do it anymore. Meditarumi's legs went limp and she slumped on the ground, feeling very depressed. As if infected by her emotions, Zabuza could no longer hold on and knelt on the ground with his short sword. Nanashi licked his dry lips, feeling equally bad. Despite this, he had not given up his vigilance around him. Because the supply was cut off, they had not even had a sip of water since the start of the war. Hunger, fatigue, and sleepiness had replaced the Konoha ninjas and became their biggest enemy. Even many Iwagakure died in the hands of the enemy because of their poor condition. Fortunately, the continuous battle caused a large number of deaths, resulting in a much sparse population density on the battlefield. For a while, no one noticed the 3 of them resting. This allowed them to take a breath. If we die here today, will you have any regrets? Meditarumi suddenly asked the 2. Silence. The only response to her was the silence of the 2. You speak first. Meditarumi looked at Zabuza who was leaning on his short sword next to her. Neither of them said anything, so she had to call on them one by one. Zabuza didn't want to answer, but seeing that she had to answer, he knew that if he refused, he would definitely get into trouble. As a last resort, he sighed and said, I want to be one of the 7 ninja swordsmen. After saying this, Terumi Mei also understood the thoughts of this taciturn companion. A dead person can't become a ninja swordsman again. Then, she looked at Nanashi and asked solemnly, what about you? Do you have any regrets that you can't fulfill? Yes. Looking at the girl on the ground, Nanashi blinked and said playfully, you still owe me a kiss. Boring. Terumi Mei turned her head away fiercely, but there was a blush on her little face. Although she knew that Nanashi was just joking, she didn't feel disgusted in her heart, and even had a little surprise. At this moment, looking at the little boy leaning on the short knife, Qishuang seemed to remember something and said solemnly, Zabuza, there is a question that has troubled me for a long time. I have always wanted to ask you, but I have never found a suitable opportunity. If we miss today, perhaps we will have no chance. Can you answer me? Facing his solemn gaze, Zabuza uttered a word heavily. Speak. Why did you kill all the other candidates in the examination room back then? As soon as these words came out, the 3 people present held their breath. Not only Qishuang was curious about this question, but even Terumi Mei was very curious. She asked it as early as the first time she met Zabuza, but she never got an answer. Even when she used ruthless hands to force a confession, she still couldn't pry open Zabuza's mouth. Today, perhaps this problem that has troubled her for a long time can be solved. On the other side, Zabuza was also stunned. He didn't expect that Qishuang would ask such an insignificant question at this time. For a moment, the field was silent, as if even the sounds of fighting and explosions around them suddenly faded away from the 3 people, and they were separated into another layer of space. After a long time, Zabuza finally spoke, no reason. Really? Qishuang really couldn't accept this answer. Yeah. Zabuza nodded, looked away, and didn't look at him again. Seeing this, Qishuang was thoughtful. The other party was obviously hiding something, not really without reason. However, Zabuza didn't want to say it, and he had no choice. Terumi Mei, who also heard this answer, was also very disappointed. She thought that at this critical time, she could pry open Zabuza's mouth, but she didn't expect that Zabuza's stubbornness far exceeded her imagination. That person seems to be Orochimaru. At this moment, Zabuza, who looked away, found a Konoha ninja, who was killing in the direction of the three people with an unstoppable attitude. The Iwagakure ninja along the way tried their best, but couldn't stop him at all. Seeking investment for a new book. There are less than 100 people in the new book investment group. So pitiful. Chapter 94 Desire to Separate. Looking at the giant python dancing wildly around the Konoha ninja, Nanashiro frowned and said, in the entire ninja world, there is no one else who can play the summoning snake to this level except Orochimaru. Although the two sides were separated by a distance, he immediately confirmed the identity of Orochimaru by the giant python surrounding him. Let's go. After saying that, he winked at Terumi Medi and Zabuza on the ground, and prepared to move. After all, with the strength of the three of them at the level of Chunin, it is impossible to stop Orochimaru, not to mention that the three of them have experienced a night of fierce fighting, and are now exhausted. Facing such a strong man, it is only a matter of life and death. Then, the two of them forced themselves to cheer up and stood up. Under the leadership of Nanashiro, they turned to the other side. On the battlefield, the intensity of the overall battle was declining significantly, because both sides were very tired. Although the Iwagakure side was cut off from supplies, and was in a very bad state, relying entirely on a strong will, the Konoha side was not much better. Although they had sufficient supplies, the speed of recovery, by relying on supplies, was still far less than the speed of consumption, so their condition naturally declined a lot. Especially mental fatigue. That is not something that can be restored by supplies, but requires real time to rest. In general, Konoha has completely gained the upper hand, but the intensity of the battle is far less intense than before. After dealing with another enemy, looking around, Terumi accidentally saw a familiar figure. Look, it's Orochimaru. She exclaimed loudly. Nana Frost and the others looked in the direction of the sound, but saw that Orochimaru had turned in a direction at some point, and was rushing straight towards them. Is it a coincidence? Nana Frost was a little puzzled. Then, he and his two companions turned in another direction, and prepared to change the battle location. Feeling that they had run a distance, Zabuza subconsciously looked back, and saw the terrifying figure again. Orochimaru also turned with us. He shouted in horror. Hearing this, Terumi and Nanashi also turned around, only to see that Orochimaru had changed direction, and rushed over them, covering them in his killing line. How could this happen? Seeing this scene, Nanashi was terrified. He changed lanes twice in a row, but failed to escape from Orochimaru's killing line. This was definitely not a coincidence, but the other party did it on purpose. Although he didn't quite understand why Orochimaru, one of the three ninjas, was staring at the three little guys, he couldn't find any other reasonable explanation for the situation in front of him, except that he was stared at by the other party. We are being stared at by Orochimaru. He told his two companions his guess with a serious face. What should we do? Terumi looked at him with a pale face, and there was a tremor in her voice. Even if the three of us fight him in our prime, there is not much hope of survival. Now we are exhausted. I'm afraid that, if he catches up, we will die. Zabuza said very disappointedly. His heart had sunk to the bottom of the valley. Maybe, there is another way to try. Nanashi looked at the two of them solemnly. I knew you had a way. Terumi said excitedly, with a little more color on her face. Then, she asked again, what way? Tell me. Seeing her happy look and unreserved trust, Qishuang felt a blockage in her heart. The word came to her lips, but she couldn't say them. What way? Just tell me. Terumi urged. The boy continued to move forward in silence. As if seeing that Qishuang was a little embarrassed, Zabuza whispered, it's come to this. If you have anything to say, just say it. If you continue to drag it on, the three of us will die. He looked back, and saw that Orochimaru was getting closer and closer to them. At this moment, a Konoha ninja suddenly jumped out in front of them to block the way. Qishuang held a kunai, and stuck to him. Terumi and the others followed closely behind. Taking advantage of the gap, when the opponent was parrying the attack of his companions, they tacitly killed him together. Then, Qishuang and his two companions continued to change directions and flee. What's the solution? Just tell me. After dealing with the blockers, Terumi Mei still urged. Looking back at Orochimaru, who changed lanes and rushed over Nanashiro's side and said helplessly, we can separate and escape. Although I don't know why Orochimaru is staring at us, his target should be the three of us, or any one of us. If his target is only one of the three of us, the other two may survive, but if his target is all three of us, then there is nothing to say, no one can escape. Can't we ask other people for help? There are still many friendly forces here. Terumi Mei said hesitantly. She didn't want to be separated from everyone. Nana Shuang shook her head and patiently explained, on this battlefield, neither Iwagakure nor our Kirigakure has a strong enough person to fight against Orochimaru and his men. If not, we wouldn't have let them go on a killing spree on this battlefield. As he spoke, he glanced back and continued, as for the others, just look at the fate of those who tried to intercept Orochimaru. You can't count on them at all. He shook his head, his tone was quite heavy. Hearing this, Terumi Mei bit her lip tightly, and had nothing to say. She didn't really want to count on others to rescue her, she just didn't want to be separated from everyone. Because she knew that once the three of them were separated, the final result would definitely be that someone would fall into Orochimaru's hands. If all three of them fell into Orochimaru's hands, it would be fine, but I'm afraid Orochimaru's target is a single companion. After all, everyone has been together for so long, it's impossible not to be sad. More importantly, such a result is no different from abandoning companions to escape. The remaining people who escaped will live in the shadow of guilt for abandoning their companions for the rest of their lives. She finally understood why Qishuang was reluctant to say the solution at first. Then, Qishuang sighed again and said with mixed feelings, how about this, the three of us vote to choose to fight together or to flee separately. The two did not answer and remained silent. Seeing this, Qishuang had to take the lead and said, I choose to flee separately. Although the result of this method is very cruel, he believes that this is the most reasonable way at the moment. It is only a matter of time before the three of them are caught up by Orochimaru, and they will be wiped out at that time. If they flee separately, there may be a glimmer of hope. The strong desire to survive made him make the most reasonable choice. Then, Zabuza also expressed his opinion. I also agree to flee separately. You. Looking at the two expressionless companions, Terumi Mei's eyes were red, and she couldn't say anything. Since the two chose to disperse, her attitude was dispensable, and the overall situation was decided. Then I'll go first. As if he noticed that the atmosphere between the three people was a little solemn, Zabuza flashed to the side and immediately left the team. Chapter 95 Lies. Then, I will too. Don't leave yet. Seeing Zabuza going away, Nanashi was also ready to leave, but before he could finish his words, he was stopped by Terumi Mei. I have something to ask you. The little girl followed him and whispered, what is it? Tell me now. Nanashi turned her head and looked at the unstoppable Orochimaru behind her, feeling extremely heavy. Zabuza's departure did not cause the other party to change their route. In other words, Orochimaru's target should be between him and Terumi Mei. He still remembered that Orochimaru often conducted human experiments, so special individuals were extremely rare materials for Orochimaru. If he became the other party's prey because of his ice release and Terumi Mei's dissolution release, it would not be difficult to understand. Not realizing that his companions' minds were not on him, Terumi Mei mustered up the courage and asked expectantly, if I was caught by Orochimaru, will you come back to save me? Hearing this, Nanashi's mind went blank. He did not expect that Terumi Mei would ask such a question at this time. This question seems simple, but it is actually very complicated, much more difficult than the dispersed choice that everyone just made. He was in a dilemma. The little girl behind him seemed to be afraid of disturbing his thoughts, and followed closely behind him, not even daring to breathe. After a short silence, Qishuang bit her lip, and whispered two words. I will. Before the voice fell, he rushed out in a flash, and disappeared in the Malay crowd with a few moves. Terumi Mei stopped. The expected answer lingered in her ears, looking at the back of the distant figure, covering her little face, crying with joy. However, she did not see the slightly opened lips of Qishuang when she left, which were the other three words that had not been uttered. I'm sorry. On the other side, Qishuang, who ran out a long way, felt bitter in his heart. Faced with Terumi Mei's sudden question, he was very embarrassed. After all, they were members of the same team, and they had fought and lived together for a long time. It was impossible to say that there was no emotion at all. He couldn't just say no indifferently, like he did to other strangers. Especially just now, he knew very well what Meditarumi wanted to hear from him. But he really couldn't tell her the answer she didn't want to hear the most in front of her. But if he really had to risk his life to save someone, he really couldn't do it. So, he could only give Meditarumi the most satisfactory answer, the most beautiful lie. The desire to survive eventually overwhelmed his feelings for his companions. At this moment, he felt that his heart had never been so ugly and dirty. It was at this time that he noticed that Orochimaru changed his route. Orochimaru's killing line once again connected him with the two people. There is no doubt that Orochimaru has been chasing the three people, and his target is him, not Meditarumi. Is this God's will to kill me? Looking at the figure behind him who changed his route and chased him, his heart sank to the bottom. After a second thought, he shook his head and consoled himself. Well, this way, they are both safe. As the matter became clear, his guilt for deceiving Meditarumi also faded a lot. At least, he didn't have to watch Meditarumi being caught by Orochimaru and hide in pain. On the other side, Meditarumi and Zabuza, who were escaping separately, soon found out who Orochimaru's target was. Looking at the man's irresistible power, Zabuza hesitated, and Meditarumi was stunned for a moment, then ran after him without hesitation. Unfortunately, compared to Orochimaru's powerful figure, Nana Frost's thin traces in the chaotic crowd were too difficult to search. After searching everywhere, she had to follow behind Orochimaru from a distance, hoping to find Nana Frost again through Orochimaru and help at a critical moment. Without the help of two companions, it became more difficult to solve obstacles, and Nana Frost's movement speed on the battlefield slowed down a lot. Fortunately, on this battlefield, most of the ninjas were of genin strength. There were not many chunins, and very few jonins. As a chunin, he was considered an elite ninja. Genins could not stop him at all, and chunins were a bit tricky, but as long as he did not fight, chunins could not do anything to him, but it was very troublesome to get rid of their entanglement. As for jonins, he had seen a few, but he knew his own business, so he did not deliberately approach them to seek death, and avoided them from a distance. Despite this, his movement speed was much slower than when the three of them teamed up before. And Orochimaru still maintained his own speed, killing and chasing at the same time. With the increase and decrease of one, Qishuang was about to be caught up by him. Looking at the distance of less than 100 meters between the two, Qishuang did not run away again, but stood quietly in place, calming his breath and recovering his strength. Because he knew clearly that continuing to escape would only waste his physical strength and was meaningless. Instead of doing so, he might as well choose to rest on the spot and recover. Although he knew that no matter what he did, it would be useless, his tenacious will to survive still supported him, and he was unwilling to give up. After all, no one knew what would happen before the result came out. Perhaps, a meteorite would suddenly fall from the sky and crush Orochimaru to death. He thought so. After killing the last rock ninja who came to cause trouble without knowing his own strength, Orochimaru walked leisurely to a place about 10 meters away from Nanoshuang and stopped. Looking at the little boy who was waiting in a serious battle, he licked the corner of his mouth, and suddenly there was a hint of salty fishy taste in his mouth. He knew that it was the blood that accidentally splashed on his face when he killed someone before. Not running away, Orochimaru asked jokingly. Nanoshuang spread his hands, shrugged, and said helplessly, "I can't run away, there is no point. You are a little self-aware." Orochimaru raised the corner of his mouth and showed an intriguing smile. I don't know if he is praising or mocking. I have a question that has been in my mind for a long time. Perhaps only Lord Orochimaru can help me solve it. I wonder if Lord Orochimaru can pity a little kid like me and give me a satisfactory answer? Nanoshuang asked him humbly, with a very humble attitude. Just like a diligent student asking a teacher questions, the two sides are like a pair of master and apprentice who have been together for many years. Of course, Nanoshuang is the apprentice and Orochimaru is the teacher. You, little kid, are quite interesting. Orochimaru nodded and smiled slightly. Well, seeing that you are so sincere, I don't mind giving you a little mercy. If you have anything to say, just ask. He slowly wiped the blood off the kune, showing a nonchalant look. I'm curious, why does a being like Lord Orochimaru have to keep staring at a little kid like me? Nana Qishuang asked him with a smile, asking for the reason why the other party was chasing him so closely. He felt that things might not be as simple as he had guessed earlier. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Recruitment. It is true that bloodline limits are rare, but that is only true for many ninjas who do not have bloodline limits. In the Land of Water, there is a family with a bloodline limit of ice release. There are more than one person who has the bloodline limit of ice release. The ice release in him may come from that bloodline limit family. And he is just a lucky person who has awakened his bloodline again, after who knows how many generations of collateral bloodline, and even forgot his surname. If Orochimaru wanted to study ice release, there is no need to spend so much effort on this battlefield and just chase him relentlessly. He only needs to give orders, and with the power of Konoha, he can quickly get what he wants, and there is no need to do it himself. In other words, Orochimaru has other intentions for him. Hehe. Orochimaru laughed sinisterly a few times, and said grimly, you are really brave. You dare to ask me such a question. Aren't you afraid of angering me, and killing you now? After saying that, an extremely sharp aura burst out from his body, with murderous intent. Almost suffocated by the powerful aura of Orochimaru, Qishuang forced a smile and said calmly, with Orochimaru's strength, it is naturally easy to take me down. He flattered him lightly first, and seeing that the other party had restrained his killing intention, he continued, what's more, my lord, you have already promised to answer my questions. I think you should not be willing to deceive a little friend like me. Hearing this, Orochimaru restrained all the aura that burst out of his body, looked at him in surprise, and said with a fake smile, you little brat, you are getting more and more interesting. Of course, he heard that there was a meaning of squeezing him in these words, but as the other party said, he really disdained to deceive such a child. Originally, he personally attacked such a child and it was already very embarrassing. If he deceived the other party again, where would his dignity as a strong man be? Thinking of this, he slowly said, okay, since you are so interesting, I will be merciful and explain it to you. Suddenly, he remembered something, and frowned and asked, your name is Qishuang, right? Yeah. Qishuang nodded, a little confused. Then you are right. Orochimaru looked at him deeply and continued, earlier, our second attack. After listening to his story, Qishuang's face turned blue and red, which was very exciting. He never thought that Orochimaru chased him to the sky and the earth for such a lame reason. It was only his fault that he was so mean at the beginning. If it weren't for the confusing attack strategy, I'm afraid there would be no such thing at all. But, then again, this guy's too petty. He glanced at Orochimaru and couldn't help but mutter to himself again. For such a little thing, Orochimaru chased him all over the battlefield. He really couldn't complain. But then he thought, if he were Orochimaru, he would have done it seriously for a long time, but found that there was no opponent to play with him, and he was just performing a one-man show. In front of so many Konoha companions, the legendary three ninjas were all embarrassed. How could they get off the stage? If they said that they were not angry, it was all nonsense. Even Buddha would get angry. Originally, I was planning to tear you into pieces and feed you to my little babies after finding you, but now I suddenly changed my mind. Looking at the little boy whose face kept changing, Orochimaru showed an intriguing smile. Are you going to let me go, sir? Nanashiro cautiously tried. No. Orochimaru licked the corner of his mouth and smiled. I have seen the traces of ninjutsu you left on those corpses, and I feel that your way of using ice release is very interesting. You are a plastic material. Plus you are also very interesting, very much to my taste. I want you to come with me. Although killing the other party can relieve the resentment in his heart, in the final analysis, it is not just a momentary impulse. Orochimaru is not someone who can take and let go. If he can save the other party's life in exchange for an interesting subordinate, this deal will not be a loss. Go with you? Qishuang was surprised. He really didn't expect that Orochimaru would recruit him. Yeah. Orochimaru nodded and smiled confidently. With the identity of the legendary 3 ninjas, as long as he threw a word of recruiting subordinates, countless ninjas would flock to him, so he was confident enough to get the boy's service. Unfortunately, he miscalculated and heard an unexpected answer. I refuse. Qishuang replied seriously. Following Orochimaru means joining him and becoming a traitor to Kirigakure. He can only live under the shadow of Kirigakure's tailed ninjas in the future. This is only the second. The most serious problem is the person who recruited him, Orochimaru. If it was the other 2 of the 3 ninjas in Konoha, it would be almost the same. The 2 of them were both upright people. If they really recruited him, they would definitely find a way to arrange a way out for him so that he would not have to worry about the future. But this was impossible. From the standpoint of the 2, they would never extend an olive branch to the ninja of another village, because this would bring the risk of enemy infiltration to Konoha. Only a guy like Orochimaru who does his own thing would do such a ridiculous thing that is unorthodox. But things happened to him. Orochimaru was moody, and recruiting him must have bad intentions. Maybe he was just in a momentary whim, just like a child shopping, just because he saw a new toy. When he got tired of playing, or suddenly had some experimental inspiration, he would be miserable. Such a result might be more tragic and terrifying than death. As for the desperate counter-attack like Ursuzi, it was completely the protagonist's halo. He didn't think that he had such an aura. Although he had a strong desire to survive, he was not without backbone and blood. Being a loyal dog wagging his tail and begging for mercy has exceeded his bottom line. Rather than living a life worse than death in the future, it is better to have a good fight now. After all, the opponent is also one of the 3 legendary ninjas. In any case, his life is not lived in vain. At least, my epitaph will read, Nanami died fighting Orochimaru in the 3rd Ninja World War. He comforted himself in his heart. Since you choose to refuse, then I can only feed you to my little baby. Several black snakes emerged from his sleeves and slowly climbed up his shoulders. Orochimaru shook his head slightly, revealing a look of regret. He really wanted to get this new toy, but he had his own dignity. For such a little kid, condescending to recruit him once was already very sincere. Continuing to recruit him would be too humiliating. Although it would be a pity to kill the other party, he would not regret it. There are too many toys in the world. At this moment, a drop of cold something hit Nanami's face. He slowly stretched out his palm, and the palm immediately became wet. He knew that it was raining. It seems that fate still favors me, doesn't it, Lord Orochimaru? He spread his palms slightly and looked at the man opposite with a smile. Regarding Orochimaru's recruitment, everyone has their own opinions. Whether to refuse or accept, everyone has different opinions, and there is no correct answer. The answer only depends on which one you prefer in your heart. Chapter 97 Lightning. At dawn, it suddenly started to rain. The sound of raindrops hitting the ground was like a cheerful drumbeat, gradually covering up the sound of weapons clashing and explosions on the battlefield. Many rock ninjas and mist ninjas hurriedly forced their opponents away and couldn't help but look up at the sky and open their mouths, using their dry lips to welcome the sudden rain. The logistics supply was cut off, and after a night of fighting, they didn't even have a sip of water to drink. At this moment, they welcomed the gift from heaven, and everyone couldn't help but smile. The originally low morale was slowly recovering, and the desperate and collapsed mood gradually disappeared in the sound of rain. This rain came just in time. I hate rain. Looking up at the sky, Orochimaru's face flashed a fierce look. Every time it rained, he couldn't help but think of that man. The man who stood on the top of the salamander in the rain country, looking down at them, and gave them the title of the 3 ninjas, Hanzo. Everyone knows that the 3 ninjas of Konoha are famous, and they were given by Hanzo, the demigod of the ninja world, the hidden rain village. It is a supreme honor. But for Orochimaru himself, it actually has another meaning, shame. As proud as he is, he calls himself a genius. Why does he need others to give him a name? What he wants, he will only take it himself, not others' charity. He doesn't need it. So, even if his body has been transformed like a snake, and likes darkness and dampness, he still hates rain. On the other side, seeing Orochimaru confronting a little boy from the hidden mist on the battlefield, many Konoha ninjas knew not to disturb him. Because the title of the three ninjas of Konoha represents power, they believe that there is no opponent that Orochimaru cannot solve. And many rock ninjas saw this scene, and they also did not intervene, because the child was a hidden mist ninja. Although the hidden mist and the hidden rock are allies, they are not partners from the same village after all, and they do not have the awareness of risking their lives to save people. It is better to say that they are more willing to see such a situation. Orochimaru was too strong. Why not delay the opponent at the cost of just one mist ninja child? If possible, they hoped that the boy could hold out for a few more moves and delay the battle for a little longer. As for the mist ninja, there were not many people there, and many died on the battlefield. The survivors were scattered in various places, and did not notice the situation here at all. Of course, King was an exception. Although he did not follow the three subordinates, he could observe the movements of the three from time to time with the powerful insight of the Byakugan. Therefore, when Qishuang separated from his teammates and confronted Orochimaru, he discovered the situation. However, he was entangled by a Konoha ninja and could not get away in a short time. The opponent who entangled him was a silver-haired boy who was about the same age as his three subordinates, but his strength was not at the same level. He thought that his three subordinates were already geniuses for being the top among the Chunins, but he did not expect that he would meet a guy who was even more amazing today. "What's your name, little guy? And why do you only have one Sharingan?" As the kunai and the short sword crossed each other, King frowned and asked the boy behind him. "Kakashi, Hatake Kakashi," the boy said without turning his head, and quickly formed several seals with his hands. "It's you." King suddenly realized and finally figured out the identity of this boy. According to the intelligence investigation of Kirigakure, Konoha has a genius ninja who passed the Jonin assessment at the age of 12, breaking the record of the youngest Jonin in the entire ninja world. The child is from the Hatake family, the son of the famous Konoha White Fang, named Hatake Kakashi. At the same time, he finally understood why the other party only had one Sharingan, and why he didn't see the red and white round fan emblem on the other party. Because the other party is not a member of the Uchiha family at all. Obviously, the Sharingan was transplanted from another Uchiha clan member. Accompanied by a noisy and sharp bird call, King, who was facing away from the boy, saw through his Byakugan that chakra was condensed in the boy's palm, and a dazzling blue-white light burst out. There were also countless arcs of electricity ejected from the blue-white light, and the raindrops falling from the sky would be instantly evaporated by it. A move made by compressing lightning attribute chakra. With his Byakugan, he immediately saw through the composition and essence of the technique. The penetration of lightning attribute chakra is already very strong, and after being compressed by the boy, the penetration of the technique may have reached a terrifying level. Its name is Chidori. "Disappear, you damn Miss Ninja." Holding the blue-white electric light in his hand, Kakashi rushed straight over. Countless lightning bolts ejected from his hands, rocks shattered, the ground cracked, and wherever he passed, there was a mess, like a comet falling on the ground. It was mighty and unstoppable. The ninjas around were all stunned. No one expected that such a child could use such a lethal ninjutsu. King, who knew the danger, did not dare to block it. He immediately kicked the nameless corpse on the ground, and then hurriedly retreated. Hiss. With the sharp sound of birds, an arm with a blue-white arc of electricity penetrated the corpse. The lightning had not yet dissipated, but the boy had already stopped. Because the corpse he penetrated belonged to a Konoha ninja. "You are so bad. You even want to desecrate their remains." Withdrawing the chakra in his hand, the lightning dissipated, and the boy carefully pulled his arm out of the corpse, and glared at the young man with a mask on. "Using any means to win, this is a ninja," King said disdainfully, and then kicked several times in a row, kicking the bodies of the Konoha ninjas around. Seeing the corpses of many companions flying over, the young Kakashi was at a loss, and had to retreat again and again. He did not dare to move forward or resist. He was afraid that the opponent would hide behind the corpses and launch a surprise attack. Naive brat. Seeing Kakashi retreat, King showed a smug smile on his face. After all, the child is just a child. Although he has good hard power, he lacks combat experience. He can only rely on time to accumulate. There is no shortcut. He finally found a chance to get rid of this annoying brat. Then, he took advantage of the cover of many corpses, found the location of Orochimaru and Nanashiro, and rushed over immediately. Kakashi did not expect the opponent to stop fighting suddenly. His retreat widened the distance between the two. It was too late to chase him. He only saw a few twists and turns, and then disappeared in the chaotic battlefield, and could not be found again. On the other side, Orochimaru looked at Nanashiro expressionlessly and said, "So what if it rains? This rain can't change your fate." "That's not necessarily true." Nanashiro shook her head and smiled, "Because water can make me stronger." Chapter 98 Heavy Rain. It's just the right time. Even if I give you another wind, you still can't fly into the sky. Orochimaru stood there with great pride, and had no intention of taking the lead. Because he knew that once he took action, this new toy would never have a chance to fight back. That's boring. Now, when he stares at this kid, he no longer simply wants to vent his resentment, but also wants to get more fun from the other person. This rain is the spice of this delicious dish. He believed that the other party's ice escape could use this to exert stronger power, allowing him to see more and more interesting things, making him more happy. As for whether the opponent could exert a power far beyond his imagination and escape from his hands, he had never had such worries. Because, here's Orochimaru. While the two were confronting each other, a little brown-haired girl followed Orochimaru far behind, quietly lurking on the edge of the battlefield. Seeing that the other party was proud of its strength and had no intention of taking the lead, Qishuang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If Orochimaru is too serious, he really has no chance at all. Putting his hands on his chest and slowly forming seals, he tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart and forced a smile. Even if I can't fly to the sky, I still have the qualification to look up at the sky. Please give it a try, Orochimaru-sama. The power of this ninjutsu. After completing the complicated seal, Qishuang gathered a group of chakra balls visible to the naked eye in his left palm. On the chakra ball, green smoke curled up, and even the raindrops dripping from the sky condensed into white snowflakes the moment they touched the green smoke. Only then did Orochimaru realize that the green smoke turned out to be cold air. It's the cold air that freezes the rainwater into snowflakes. Even from a distance of nearly 10 meters, he could vaguely feel the astonishing chill emanating from the chakra ball. It's interesting. Looking at the snowflakes flying around the chakra ball, Orochimaru nodded and asked curiously, "Is this its final form?" If this is the final form of the opponent's ninjutsu, then it was such a disappointment to him. It's just an energy ball containing changes in the properties of ice chakra. It's really far different from Minato Boy's ninjutsu of ultimate chakra form change. On the other side, at the edge of the battlefield between the two, she saw the chakra ball condensed in Qishuang's hand from a distance. The little girl frowned secretly and said, "Why have I never seen him use this ninjutsu?" It was Meditarumi. It has been a long time since Qishuang joined their king team, but this was the first time she saw Qishuang use such a ninjutsu. It really surprised her. There is no doubt that this is a surefire way for Qishuang to hit the bottom of the box. Although she didn't know the effect of this technique, she felt blindly confident about this technique. Because in her impression, Qishuang always looked confident. She believed that even Orochimaru, one of the three ninjas, would have to avoid the edge of Nanshiang's killing technique. Faced with Orochimaru's inquiry, Qishuang shook his head, looked at the chakra ball in his hand, and said with a smile, "Its final form is not like this." Hearing this, Orochimaru's eyes lit up, and his heart a little more anticipation. He is obsessed with the study of ninjutsu, so he is willing to collect all kinds of ninjutsu. This is true even for the blood succession limit ninjutsu that he cannot practice. The ice escape ninjutsu used by Qishuang was very different from anything he had ever seen before. He had a hunch that today, he might be able to see an amazing ninjutsu. Qishuang held up the chakra ball in his left hand and slowly raised it above his head. The chakra ball in his palm was seen dissipating in the air at an extremely fast speed, just like candle wax melted by the flame, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Ice release heavy rain ice skill. Just when Orochimaru felt very surprised and was about to ask, there was a sharply increasing chill above his head. At the same time, he also discovered an extremely strange situation. The rain stopped. The rain within a radius of 2 meters stopped, but the rain 2 meters away was still falling. Then, there was a sound of piercing the sky above his head. He looked up and saw countless long needles condensed with ice shooting down from the sky. Those ice needles nearly 10 centimeters long poured down like raindrops, filling the gap of rainwater within a radius of 2 meters. Did the rain condense into ice needles? Seeing this scene, Orochimaru immediately understood where the rain, that suddenly disappeared, went. He didn't dodge, he still stood there without moving even a step, but a big brown snake came out of his sleeves and blocked the top of his head. He was ready to experience the power of this ninjutsu for himself. Furthermore, this ninjutsu covers a 2-meter radius. With the explosive speed of the ice needles and its amazing attack density, it is difficult for even him to avoid them all. When ordinary people encounter this ninjutsu, they simply cannot escape it. If I give him a few more years to grow up and expand the coverage of this technique, I'm afraid I won't be able to escape either, he thought secretly. Immediately, ice needles penetrated his body, chilling his body, and the long snake above his head was instantly pierced by countless ice needles. Snakes are cold-blooded animals. They like darkness and moisture, but they don't like the deeper cold. The ice needle entered the body and the cold air eroded. The snake instinctively wanted to escape from this dangerous place, but Orochimaru gave it a death order. No matter how scared it was, it did not dare to disobey that person's order. He could only lie motionless on top of Orochimaru's head, passively accepting the washing of ice needles and the baptism of cold air. The ice needles poured down in one fell swoop, and the attack subsided in a moment, and the raindrops followed closely. Only Orochimaru and the long snake above his head were covered with ice needles, like two hedgehogs, one large and one small. Raising his right arm and feeling the chill caused by the ice needle entering his body, Orochimaru couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. An attack of this level is nothing more than a few flesh wounds. If an ordinary ninja is unprepared, he may be seriously injured, but it will not be fatal. In terms of his regeneration power, it makes no sense at all. Immediately, he asked the little boy in surprise, "That's it?" "Of course not." Qishuang forced a smile, slowly raised her right hand, and snapped her fingers. "Kill." The moment the word kill was spoken, Orochimaru felt a frightened feeling in his body for no reason. He knew that it was his instinctive reaction to danger. He hadn't felt this way in a long time. He really didn't expect that such a Chunin level brat could actually use a ninjutsu to cause him to have a crisis reaction. This surprised and frightened him. Fortunately, he was right. This kid was indeed extraordinary and fully qualified to be his new toy. What was scary was that this ninjutsu was so powerful that it actually gave him a sense of crisis. At the same time, at the moment when the word kill fell, another chakra wave came from the ice needles inserted all over his body. Hey hey, hey hey hey, hey 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 hey. Chapter 99 No Solution. Crack, crack. A series of sounds like broken glass came from all over his body, and Orochimaru immediately discovered that it was caused by the shattering of the ice needles inserted into his body. Not only that, at the moment when the ice needles shattered, the positions where those ice needles were located once again burst out with a deeper chill. There was ice condensing in his body. He didn't even come back to his senses. All over his body, at the positions where the ice needles were originally inserted, inside his body, ice flowers bloomed again. Ice flowers with petals, made of ice needles. In just a moment, those ice flowers, which were only the size of fingers, stretched his flesh and blood, and tore his skin. Stained with red blood beads, the ice needle-shaped petals showed their hideous appearance on the surface of the skin. In the blink of an eye, Orochimaru's whole body was covered with ice flowers that penetrated his body. There was not an inch of intact skin on his body. Bleeding profusely, his whole body was immediately stained red with blood. As for the psychic snake on his head, it didn't even have a chance to struggle. The moment the ice flowers in its body bloomed, its body was torn apart, and it died completely. At the edge of a battlefield, when the ice needles fell, Orochimaru was calm and composed. Terumi Mei was still a little worried, but when she saw Orochimaru suddenly turned into a bloody man, she was so shocked that she almost jumped up. Although she didn't know what had happened, Orochimaru was suddenly covered in blood, which obviously meant that he was seriously injured. Nana Shuang's ninjutsu achieved extremely remarkable results. How could she not be happy? On the other side, looking at the motionless bloody man, Nana Qishuang forced herself to cheer up and asked jokingly, "Lord Orochimaru, how effective is my ninjutsu?" After a night of fighting, he was exhausted. If it weren't for the good weather brought by the rain, he couldn't use this ultimate killing technique. But even so, with the help of the weather, using this ninjutsu almost drained his chakra. At this moment, his limbs were sore, that he didn't even have the strength to stand. He could only sit on the ground and use his arms to support his body, so that he didn't fall down completely. Orochimaru stood in the rain without replying. Only blood mixed with rainwater flowed down the corners of his clothes. However, Qishuang noticed that the blood flowing from the other part of his wound was getting less and less. Seeing that the overall situation has been decided, Meditarumi was ready to go over and meet up with Qishuang, but found that Orochimaru's body suddenly moved. She hurriedly stopped, but she saw Orochimaru suddenly raised his head, and the corners of his mouth stretched back in a weird state, stretching his mouth very wide. Then a pale hand slowly stretched out of his mouth, followed by a shoulder and a human head. A guy who looked exactly like Orochimaru, unharmed, came out of his mouth with a wet mucus. Then the blood-red Orochimaru fell limply to the ground, like a human skin peeled off alive. Although Meditarumi couldn't figure out what was going on, she roughly understood that Orochimaru used a special method to remove the original injuries on his body. She didn't understand, but Ninashiro on the other side did. That was Orochimaru's unique substitute technique. The opponent used his external body as a substitute to resist most of the physical damage and unfavorable conditions, and then transferred the main body from the mouth, like shedding skin, to avoid the opponent's harm. It can be said that it is an extremely perfect substitute technique, or it can be said that it is a life-saving technique. As long as Orochimaru's chakra is not exhausted, he can continue to shed his old body to avoid harm. The opponent's attack target is always his substitute, the rolled body. In a sense, this is an alternative immortal technique. Although it was expected that her technique would not have much meaning to the opponent, when she really saw this scene, Nanashiro still felt a little lost. It's a powerful technique. Orochimaru, who had shed out of his old body, nodded to the little boy, walked over slowly, and continued. As far as the technique you just used is concerned, once you are hit by the first wave of attack, there is no possibility of escaping the second wave of attack. And your second wave of attack is precisely the core of that technique. Relying on the expansion of condensed ice to destroy the opponent's body, it is a bit similar to the implantation technique of the first generation Hokage. With a mortal body, no one can withstand such an attack. Once hit, you will either die or be disabled. In the entire ninja world, there are only a handful of people who can withstand your ninjutsu head-on. As soon as he changed the subject, he asked like a curious baby, "But I'm very curious, how did the second wave of attack of your technique come about?" Knowing that she would suffer if she didn't answer, Qishuang had no intention of hiding anything. Looking at the man who was slowly approaching, she immediately said, "Water and ice are the same thing, but in different forms." Yeah. Hearing this, Orochimaru nodded. He knew very well that the transformation of ice and water was indeed the same thing. Qishuang continued, "Water and ice have a critical temperature point for mutual transformation. At this temperature, they can coexist and can melt into water or freeze into ice. Based on this point, I kept the ice needles in the first attack at the critical temperature point and sealed the water into the ice needles. When the ice needles are inserted into the target's body, I will control the reserved ice attribute chakra on the ice needles, and it will easily freeze the water inside into ice, expand from the opponent's body, and cause damage. Can it be like this?" Orochimaru was a little surprised. Water will freeze into ice after releasing heat when it is cold, and ice will melt into water after absorbing heat when it is hot. He was very clear about this process of change, but it was the first time he heard that ice and water have a critical temperature point for coexistence. "Tell me quickly, what is this critical temperature point?" he asked in surprise. Seeing Orochimaru's ecstatic look, Qishuang was surprised at first. After thinking about it, he realized that for a madman who is obsessed with research, nothing can make him feel more happy than gaining new knowledge. Thinking of this, he suddenly had an idea and said with a smile, "How about I make a deal with you? I'll tell you the critical temperature point of ice water conversion, and you let me go safely. Deal. Hearing this, Orochimaru stopped, then looked at the little boy jokingly, and said, "Just you?" Before he finished speaking, he opened his right palm to Qishuang on the ground. The hidden shadow snake hand 4 or 5 dark brown snakes suddenly shot out from his sleeves, and rushed straight towards the little boy in the rain. Seeing this scene, Qishuang's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He suddenly realized that, although he had found the bargaining chip for the deal, he forgot that he was not qualified to trade. The weak are not qualified to trade with the strong. It seems that there is really no way to escape. Looking at the long snakes that were shooting towards him, his heart was bitter. Just when he was completely desperate, a female voice like a silver bell came from the side. "You look so miserable, but you don't look like you at all." Unless Orochimaru is beaten to ashes, ordinary physical damage is meaningless to him. As long as he has chakra, he can transfer his body. For this point, you can refer to the part where Naruto went berserk on the Shiandi Bridge. Therefore, the third generation chose to deal with Orochimaru by attacking his soul, so that the body substitution technique would be useless. Chapter 100, Snake Power. Dissolving Style. Dissolving Monsters Technique. Then, a milky white mud wall fell, lying between Qishuang and the long snake that shot towards him. The mud wall appeared too suddenly, and the long snake was moving too fast, so it couldn't stop its momentum and rushed up. Boom. The long snake hit the mud wall, but Orochimaru found that the milky white mud wall was not formed by ordinary earth escape. Even with the power of the summoned long snake, it couldn't break it with one blow. It was firmly stuck on it, and couldn't get away at all. At the same time, he also found that the part where the long snake and the mud wall were stuck was actually emitting wisps of green smoke, and the snake body quickly melted into the milky white mud wall at a speed visible to the naked eye. Strong mucus with corrosive power. Having read countless ninjutsu, he immediately saw the nature of the mud wall. On the other side, Qishuang was stunned when he saw the milky white mud wall falling. He turned his head and saw Meditarumi rushing up with wet hair. "Why are you here?" he asked in a lost voice. "Why can't I come?" Meditarumi stepped past him, winked at him playfully, and then looked at Orochimaru in the distance and said, "Let's talk later. Let me teach him a lesson first." After that, she bypassed the wall of mucus, puffed up her cheeks, and spit out a mouthful of milky white mucus at Orochimaru. Ignorance, fearlessness. Seeing the milky white mucus coming like an overwhelming force, Orochimaru shook his head. He had noticed the little girl following him early in the morning, but since she didn't do anything, he didn't care. At this moment, seeing that she had provoked him, he no longer had any intention of showing mercy. He calmly released the snake body on his arm, freed his hands, quickly formed a set of hand seals, and pressed his palms on the ground. Chakra was injected into the void, and black symbols were woven into a spiderweb, spreading from under his palms to the surroundings. Destroy the chaotic snakes. Then, Qishuang felt a violent wave not far ahead, and then the ground suddenly broke open, and 2 huge pythons rushed out one after another. One of them opened the way, and with a snake body of 1 meter in diameter, it blocked the milky white mucus that was rushing in, and at the same time, protected Orochimaru behind it. The other one stuck to its companion's back, using it as a springboard, jumped over the milky white mucus, and shot straight at the little girl behind it. "Be careful," Qishuang warned loudly, but it was too late. Terumi Medi had seen several long snakes that blocked Orochimaru with one blow, and she couldn't help but feel a little proud, so she rushed up and attacked directly. When the 2 giant pythons as big as ancient trees broke out of the ground, she realized that the long snakes that Orochimaru had captured Qishuang earlier were just a piece of cake, and he didn't really move at all. And this time, she acted rashly, but she was a sheep walking into the tiger's mouth. In the blink of an eye, the huge python head, which was as big as a water tank, was in front of her. At this moment, a figure flashed before her eyes, and a little boy stood in front of her, holding the python head tightly with a short knife. Zabuza? She immediately recognized the identity of the person. Firefly Light. On the other side, Orochimaru also found the little boy who suddenly joined the battle, but he still looked calm. He just glanced at him casually, and no longer paid attention to him, because the ending would not change at all. Go. As soon as Zabuza touched the giant python, the overwhelming force pressed him so hard that he couldn't breathe. He overestimated himself and underestimated this giant python. Before he finished speaking, he could no longer hold on and was immediately pushed out by the giant python. Even Meditarumi behind him couldn't react. They were like candied haws on a bamboo stick. They were pushed out by the giant python together. It hit the ground with a thud, like a rolling gourd, and rolled several times on the ground before stopping. It seemed that he was too proud of his status and didn't want to argue with the children, or for some other reason. After one blow, Orochimaru released the summons of the two giant pythons and stopped them from continuing to attack. This made Qishuang on the other side of the ground secretly relieved. Just the collision of the giant python should not kill the two. Then, he saw Orochimaru opening his right palm to him from a distance. Hidden Shadow Multi-Snake and the dark brown long snake shot out from Orochimaru's sleeves and pounced on him again. Qishuang looked up at the sky and sighed helplessly. This time, he really accepted his fate. At this moment, a familiar voice came from far away. With your strength, is it too much to attack 3 children, Orochimaru? Qishuang saw the blue leader blocking him with the flash body technique. Kune flew up and down in the rain, and the heads of several long snakes that shot towards him were immediately cut off by it, leaving only the red blood spilled all over the ground. As the rain mixed with the blood of other corpses, it was impossible to distinguish one from another. One after another. You are really annoying. Orochimaru frowned. The pleasure that he had finally gained from Nishiro was also consumed by the mist ninjas who came out one after another to block him. He had already had the intention to kill. However, this mist ninja who had just arrived was different from the 2 children before. Just by his breath, he could tell that this was a Jonin level existence, not a small fish that could be easily taken down. He was a little annoyed. On the other side, King, who was nervously on guard against Orochimaru, asked the 3 people loudly, "How are you 3? I'm fine, but I don't know how the other 2 are." Nanashiro struggled to get up and replied immediately. After resting on the ground for a while, he had already recovered some strength. Cough cough cough. A cough came, and the 2 people lying on the ground on the other side moved. Covered in mud, Meditarumi slowly climbed up and replied in a hoarse voice, "I'm fine, but Zabuza is seriously injured." Not far away, Zabuza was bleeding from his mouth and nose, lying in the mud, motionless. If she hadn't seen his chest rising and falling rapidly and breathing heavily, Meditarumi would have almost thought he was dead. Just now, even though Zabuza was blocking in front of her and didn't face the impact of the giant python directly, the force of the collision also made her body in great pain, and she had no strength to fight again. And Zabuza, who was blocking in front of her, faced the impact of the giant python directly, and his injuries can be imagined. Hearing that the 3 were still alive, King secretly breathed a sigh of relief. This trip was not in vain. Although Orochimaru was very dangerous, as long as he was careful, he could still get away. After all, these 3 subordinates had followed him for a long time, and he really couldn't convince himself if he didn't save them. "Since you are all rushing up to die, I will grant your wish." Orochimaru licked his lips, revealing a bit of impatience. Just as he was about to attack again, a heart-pounding chakra fluctuation came from the sky. A dazzling white light cut through the clouds, like a giant sword falling from the sky. So be it. With Orochimaru's strength, if he took it too seriously, the 4 of them would be wiped out. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.